All right, good. We're live. This is a call the meeting to order, the Hampton Board of Selectmen remote meeting. We'll rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Is anyone else either here on the Zoom recording? Anyone?
No.
No. All right, thank you. Our first item of business is the formalizing the town meeting procedure in compliance with the regular guidance from the state. We want to review that. We have is the town moderator on?
Not yet. We have the former town moderator on. Maybe you can fill in.
So basically, the way the moderator has outlined the plans, that we'll have the voters will be checked in under the portico. Please prepare for inclement weather. The arriving voters must maintain social distancing while queuing up for check-in. For those attending the meeting, you will need to bring your own face coverings, but I would assume we would have some available just in case someone forgot theirs. Hand sanitizer will be available and must be used upon entering the building. Voters will be directed to their chair in the cafeteria by volunteers. Those attending together will be seated together, but there'll be no more than 3 to a seated section. The seats, as my understanding, will be marked off 6 feet apart, right? There will be no floor microphones. Questions will be addressed to the moderator, and the moderator will repeat them if necessary. When the meeting is over, people will be asked to exit the room in reverse order at the direction of the moderator, and if it's determined at the time that the environment is unsafe or not conducive to a fair and positive meeting, we'll recess and adjust and meet at another time.
Moderator has connected it.
Okay. Mr. Moderator, do you have any input? Are we just reading over your meeting plan? Anything else to add?
No, he's had some issues, I think.
Oh, okay.
He's now gone. He'll be back.
All right.
I think, like we've said before, we beat this to death. I think Rick has done a pretty good job of laying out the logistical things, and right now the big question is getting this out to the public. I think he sent it to the Times, so
Okay,
they're
he's
aware
back.
of it.
Okay.
We can ask him that.
Yeah.
Rick's
Rick?
connecting.
Connecting. Oh, well.
They just called him on the phone and put him on speaker.
Okay.
Rick, can you hear us? Rick?
All right, continue with what you were saying, John.
So the key part, I think, is getting it out to the public. I think we have a good list of the logistical thoughts that Rick has come up with. It's a good order of business. People need to know how it's going to be done. Did he send it out to the Times? Do we need to put it on the website, have Bob formalize it and post it that way? If it's on the website, people will share it on Facebook. Facebook doesn't get to everybody. It's got to be in the Times as well. I'm pretty sure that Rick sent it off to Tyler. I'd like to confirm that if Rick is there.
He's here.
If not, I'll just call him on the phone and we'll put him on speaker. It might be just as easy.
Give him a call.
The question also is, we have a chat line question.
Yeah.
I want to know if the town meeting will be broadcast live for those who cannot attend.
The answer, I believe, is no.
No. Okay.
We don't have that capacity. Also, if Eva is on, I would ask, does she need any additional? We need additional police?
Hey, Rick, I got you on speaker here. Since we're going to the old technology.
I can see you guys, but I can't hear anything. So
that's okay. I think Don's question was: this is a great list, but how are we getting out to the public? Did you send it into the Times?
It did go to the Times, and then the final copy, and it can still be changed as of tomorrow in case anybody wanted to amend it. But it's gone to the Times,
Okay.
and then we can put it on the website as well.
Well, I think that's what we talked about, getting
Yeah.
it on the town site. Bob can do that, and then people would grab it from the town site and share it on Facebook and probably tweet it out there, because I'm sure it would be a huge tweet success, right, Don? Yeah.
Yes. Do you think we need any additional police personnel to help direct direct people in the building and that?
Well, one of the things that I did change this afternoon based on a comment that came from Rose and it came from Vic Patello and kind of alternating thoughts was that as opposed to numbering the chairs and putting arrows on the floor, it seemed to me, if you saw the final draft, to have someone there to, in essence, direct people to their seats. Now, we could line up volunteers to do that, so that's one thing. I'm not sure that's a viable use of a police officer to direct people to their seats. But the thing I do wonder about is the thing that's going to be difficult about this is even though we've got an 8-foot distance between everybody coming into the meeting, my concern becomes somebody who chooses not to wear a face covering for medical reasons or whatever. If there becomes an issue between residents with regard to social distancing, is it going to be better to have at least somebody in blue there to have everybody it's like a padlock keeps an honest person out. I mean, obviously we have great townsfolk, but on the flip side, this is one of those things that hasn't been easy for anybody to adjust to. So I think at least one more officer would be helpful.
And then you're looking for ushers pretty much to bring people to their areas.
I think, it's John, I think if we did it with really 2 people, if the people checking them in said go to the cafeteria and there's somebody standing at the door as you walk into the cafeteria, and they point the people up the line, and then the other volunteer would say, kind of as lack of a good analogy, like parking cars, say, okay, please go to the last seat in the row. Just fill the seats all the way till you get back to me, then go to the next row.
Don, might as well be you and me, Don.
Right. Are you going to, and at the end of the meeting, you'll direct the people row by row?
Yeah, what I thought I would do with that one, Don, is that when at the start of the meeting, maybe go through. We have the standard ground rules, which there's not going to be many of this year because you guys have done a good job paring this thing down, a great job. And then I can, as part of the introduction to it, I'll say, explain that there will be a bathroom available. I've working with Herb and the staff over at TWB, they've been great. Make an announcement about the bathroom. Preference for limited use, but it is available. Here's how to do it. And last of all, as we leave tonight, we need for everyone to leave in the reverse order that they came, so the last person in the back corner goes out and follow out. So I would definitely make that announcement. I would do it during and then at the end when we adjourn. So yes.
Okay. Any other questions? Looks
Nope.
like we're good to go here.
Just my email out to make sure we pull out the signs for town meeting and get them posted.
If you have any questions,
Tyler will get this in. If we, a reverse 911 call might be too wordy for this, but maybe a reminder to visit the town website so that you can get a sense of what town meeting will look like for everyone this year.
Yeah, Bob will do that later this week.
Yeah.
So our position is masks are required unless you have a medical issue.
Well, this was one of the things. I will tell you that I ended up on the phone on Friday, and while I know I'm supposed to get clearance from the tower, i.e. you guys, before I go to Rose, she did call me after she got it, and the wording that's in this list that you guys saw this afternoon, we spent a painstaking amount of time on it. The issue of face coverings is we really had to kind of look at the wording from the standpoint so that the public would not have the perception that they could be precluded. So face coverings are, we kind of boiled it down to look at bring your own face coverings as a way to say, come on, common sense, you need a face covering, bring your own, come on in. So, once they get in, I guess the only other thing that we should potentially talk about is for folks who come in without face covering and or non-voters, do we set up an overflow space from the get-go, maybe the cafeteria with some additional audio visual, or do we just, I think we're all of the mindset that this in all likelihood may not be our most heavily attended town meeting, do we take a chance and go with what we got in the cafeteria? That was my only other note, was overflow.
So I guess you're saying we can strongly encourage the face mask, but we cannot.
You can't demand it. Okay. I guess the one thing though, in talking to, I had long conversation with, I did talk to Jane, I did talk to Eva, I talked to Lori McCool. It sounds to me like while you can't demand face covering to attend the meeting, you can make it clear to folks that with the guidance of the CDC and this type of thing, that on your way into the meeting, you need to wear a face covering. Once you reach your position, if you will, there's 8 feet of separation between the chairs, the way we laid it out when we did this. So theoretically, you're going to have enough separation, but you can say that a face covering is required until you reach your designated seat. But Rose and I, we went through this, and Rose is, she does a great job. She's very concerned about setting us up for failure with regard to how we approach the general public as to what they're supposed to do when they come in the door.
Is there a chance, Jeff, that he'd have some available, maybe from the stockpile? We're not talking hundreds, but if somebody says, well, all right, fine, I'll put one on and bring one, and we have some available.
The health agent and the chief of police have joined the meeting, so if you want to ask questions, they're available.
The perception we had, or part of the discussion, and Lori, obviously with Lori and Jeff were here, one of the reasons we set the question up the way it says, that for those attending the meeting you need to bring your own face covering, it does make people to the potential that they may not have it, but we kind of felt like the wording in a subtle way would be for the folks doing the check-in to say, geez, we see that you don't have a face covering with you. Can we offer you a disposable one, which you can use for the meeting? And then if they were available, or we could get our hands on a box of the what everybody seems to be going with, all blue disposable. If you had something so that the folks at the check-in, and I haven't finished this part of the conversation with Eva, would be the subtle way of saying, it looks to us as though you've forgotten a face covering. Can we offer you one? If they say no, they say no. Then we have to make some sort of arrangement to get them into the meeting, and they have to wear a face covering going in. If Jeff or anybody has some disposable, they could be right at the check-in stand and say, okay, here's a face covering.
Right.
And so if we had some disposable, and I agree with John, or as his comment to Jeff, I clearly don't think we need 200 of them, but if we had 25 in backup, and making sure we had hand sanitizer as people are entering, and it's clear that as you enter, you must sanitize, I think everybody will get it.
Okay. And the voter cards, we'll just throw those away after?
That's Eva's call. Talking to Eva and Dick, I talked to them both again today, and if anybody else is there, I don't want to step on toes. Feel free to jump on me. We had the conversation about whether or not, if we could get ourselves in a position to segregate the voters from the non-voters, thereby making it a hands-only meeting. I think that's a bit tricky, because Rose and I had that conversation as well on Friday about, because initially, if you guys remember, you folks remember from the first draft, I had in there a line that said, in essence, in a subtle way, tried to say limited to town meet to voters only. It wasn't that blunt, but even Rose's wet reading of it was, that's not a good idea because it might make people feel precluded. I don't really know how you get into a scenario of segregating the non-voters from the voters. So to answer your question directly, John, I'm probably giving you too much background, but to answer your question directly, and Eva would have to decide this, either you throw them away when you're done, or we try and find a way to isolate the voters from the non-voters, and it becomes a hands-on meeting.
You're talking $5 in paper. Throw them away, or people can take them home as a memento of voting in the COVID town meeting.
That's right.
There you go.
And I think Eva, to that end, I think Eva also did get some colored paper, like a different shade. So maybe was her thought process. I think she was trying to have multiple positions ready.
So we'll go with the cards, and they can either take them home or throw them away.
Exactly right.
Yes. Agreed.
Yeah. That's.
Yeah. All right. I think it looks good. We're ready to go with.
Thank you for your efforts.
Thank you.
No worries. Okay. If you need it from me, let me know.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Bye.
So now Warrant articles.
Warrant articles. All right.
Much easier than Zoom, just calling somebody, isn't it?
Yeah. So the first one is town report. Who generally does that?
The moderator.
The moderator will do that, and he'll suggest that we just don't approve it. Annual operating budget, that's the advisory committee?
Correct.
Okay, prior year bills.
It can be advisory, it can be us. Again, typically there's neither. There are none.
Yeah.
There aren't any.
Okay.
Pass over.
So far, so good. Article 4.
Send me one if that's us. I can do that one if you'd like.
Okay, put John on that one. Enterprise fund. I'll do that one.
Typically
That's
Board of Health.
Board of Health. Okay, Board of Health. You're the Board of Health. What's your name? Mary Ellen.
Don, thank you for the, not Don, Bob, thank you for the research and making the motion there.
Community.
It wasn't down to pennies. I mean, seriously, you had to round dollars? Come on.
Community Preservation Committee.
Usually Doug.
Doug could do that one. Okay. Let's see. Conservation Fund.
Either Bonnie or Ted. Ted, and then Bonnie or Ted for the Concom.
Okay.
Ted?
They'll work it out.
Yeah.
Okay. Highway State Aid.
One of us.
All right, I'll do that. I'll do that one.
Who? Don for this?
Yeah, give me one to do. Library additional state aid.
One of the trustees, typically Beth or Kathy, probably.
Okay, trustee. Okay. Contribution to assessor stabilization fund.
Right. I think Norm is chair, so Norm. He'll do the next two.
Okay. I have in the motions that we're going to pass over those. We're not going to take any action.
It could be, but they would
If you
still
want to take
that.
action, what I'll do is change and put a real motion in there. If you're going to do it, they want 11,000 to go in, 16,000 to come out.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah,
So I'll change it.
So we'll do 11,000 going in, right?
Yeah.
Does the advisory committee know that? Advisory committee know that?
well, it's a negative. It's a negative. So it
That's
doesn't affect
directly
the-
from, I don't know if the advisory committee planned that in,
Well,
but
it doesn't matter. You're
No.
saying it's 11 going in
Right.
and 16 coming out, so it's
Right.
actually a.
5,000.
Those are the
Are we
numbers that
actually
Carolyn gave
appropriating
me.
or?
Carolyn gave me those numbers.
16 going, okay,
Okay, so
Yeah.
11 going in, 16 coming out for expenses, so the replenishment with 11.
right,
It
don't
doesn't
think
matter, that's a stabilization fund anyway.
No,
right.
but the 11 is raised and appropriate. So it does come out of the number.
11 is raised
16 coming-
appropriate.
and 16 coming out is used to pay their expenses.
And then 16, right.
Yeah,
So it's
see,
a,
what I would suggest is
so
that
it's
you
a
get,
5,000.
well, yeah, but the 16 doesn't go, it goes to make expense, so 11 is the delta there.
Right.
I would suggest that you ask the assessors, do they need this before November? If they don't, then we can take action. in
Actually,
November.
when I asked Carolyn about that, she said, I thought we weren't gonna do this
Oh.
until
November.
November.
Right, but when they need.
And
money,
then I
that's
said, well, let me have the numbers anyway.
Yeah.
I got the numbers and I wrote a motion basically that there's gonna be no action taken.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right. I thought that's what we were going to, okay.
So we can still stay with no action taken, right?
Yeah, we can still
And
stay
then
with no
defer
action
till
taken.
November.
We'll just
If they
double check with
double-check
them.
they don't need it.
If they don't need it.
School resource officer's a good number.
Okay, that's a good number.
Yeah. Who's gonna do that?
I can take that.
Okay.
I got the history on it.
Yeah, okay. And reserve fund,
The next three are typically advisory,
advisory, right,
and the last two are no action.
advisory. Advisory.
The advisory has dropped reserve fund down to 5.
Mhm.
I was told that they're gonna bring it up 20 more thousand in the fall.
But we've done that in prior years,
Yeah.
out of free cash. It's
Yeah.
really their call. I think what we heard the other day is that the 20,000 is not gonna make a huge impact, but if they wanna,
Yeah.
so to speak, make a team effort, I have no problem with that.
The reserve has not been tapped this year.
Right, and typically it doesn't get tapped in the first 6 months anyhow, so it's not like they need the 25
Right.
in the first 6 months.
So they'll raise and appropriate 5, and then they'll take 20 out of free cash in the fall.
Mhm.
Okay.
And in prior years, we've even done 0 and 25. Again, same thing, because free cash, you typically don't need the reserve fund until something happens in the spring.
All right. So that's it for that, right?
Mhm.
We're ready to go there. What else we got here? All right.
Election.
Election procedure. We have Eva on.
Or is she down the hall? Did she actually leave?
Uh,
Let me go see if
Yeah,
she's
see if
down
it's
the
on.
hall.
Be careful of the cable. Yeah.
She's down the hall? I'll go get her.
you got it.
I think she'd be happier just sitting in the
Yeah,
chair.
yeah, you sit right there. Yeah. So after this brief interlude, we'll have a word from our sponsor.
Charlie Baker's calling. What are you seeing at the pharmacy, Don? A lot of people, what's the general state of mind?
A lot of people are concerned.
So
They're
do they
concerned.
feel a second wave coming?
Yeah,
Are they
they
believing that?
they're not sure. There a lot of people are getting 90-day supplies of their medications
Yeah.
and a lot of delivery. We never did deliveries before. We're doing
Right.
deliveries and stuff like that, especially for the elderly folks. The elderly folks.
Hmm.
How's
The mature,
supply?
the
mature,
mature one, yes.
yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Abundant supply of various prescriptions?
Yeah, there's no
Mhm.
problem. No
Mhm.
sure.
She's not there. She hasn't closed up, but her door's closed.
Oh, all right.
Mhm.
So is the health agent on?
She is, Lori?
All right. Want to talk about two things? I guess we should talk about the not only the election, but also the outside seating.
Can we do that first, just in case you bring them back?
Yeah.
And that way she can join that part.
Do the outside seating?
Yep.
Where are we?
Yes, so Jane and I worked on getting together an application for the restaurants to at least get this in motion, because I know they're all anxious and if they're able to do something to get it done. So we took the application today. We made copies of it. Jane was gracious enough to get out to anyone that was available to get the applications to them. We received 3 applications back again today. So we're taking a look at those. So what it is that in order to get into this initial phase of phase 2 for restaurants is the outdoor seating. And in doing that, they have certain guidelines that they have to follow with their seating, with their, if they have a tent or don't have a tent. And so we've asked everybody to put together that information for us to review. And hopefully sometime within phase 2, they're also proposing that they're going to open indoor seating at a reduced capacity, but then again, rearranging furniture, making sure there's 6 feet apart between the chairs at each table, that there's no more than 6 people at each table, and just a good flow of things. So one of the questions as we were going through this, and Jane, chirp in here if I'm missing something, is there's various people that need to take a look at it, we feel, in order to make sure that we're providing a safe environment for not only the patrons, but also the residents at large. So as the Board of Health, what we're looking for is the proper spacing, the flow, and that part of it. We're also hoping that fire would say that we're not, if they're expanding to the outside, that they're not blocking any fire lane, and that the fire trucks still have proper access to get to where they need to go, and for safety reasons as well. So and then building department would have a say if they're erecting tents, because there's usually a quick little building permit that they need to get. And as the governor has indicated, we're trying to make this as streamlined as possible and not make it cumbersome. There's no fees that are going to be associated with them going through this process. And we've worked with, these are our businesses in our small town here, and I just want to make this as comfortable for them and as comfortable and safe for everybody else, to get them so where they can finally get back to a little bit of normalcy, although it be it outside, and rainy days are going to be something else. And so hopefully what we're looking for the Board of Health to approve would be that we can take those applications, review them, just have a sign off for the various departments. And then once everybody says, okay, this looks good, then we can just give the green light and have them do it. The only time I think that the Selectmen would have to think of how they want to handle is the expansion of the liquor license to the outdoors. There's a process for that. I think they've indicated on the various things that I read that there's an easy process the selectmen can do that. And so that if you do have an indoor liquor license and you now are going to go outside, or if you have an outdoor patio and you already have the license to serve drinks outside, if you want to expand that outside seating, that'll cover the expansion of what's already an outdoor availability for them to serve alcohol outside. So.
And you've only had 3 applications so far?
Correct. Yes, we've had Mountain View, La Cucina's, and Reed's.
Okay. And my understanding is the golf course can't do it because it's a golf course.
Correct. It's my understanding the golf course can't do it because they're private. It has something to do with it being a private golf course compared to like a golf course that's open to the public.
Really?
So,
Yeah, it's kind of quirky. I don't quite understand the reasoning behind it, but that's my understanding.
okay, and I did see online that some places were advertising outside dining tomorrow.
Mhm.
And that's okay without this process, or
Well, that's what I'm here, and we've got those 3 applications. So,
different one?
you know, if we can, you know, Jane and I have kind of taken a look at them already. I've already spoken with, since we've got the applications in, I've already spoken with Reed's and explained to him he was having some seating on the sidewalks. He already got the okay from Mr. Semino that he can utilize that area because that was part of the application, that you have permission from your landlord to do that. And I called them back and indicated that I just wanted to make sure that there was still adequate space on the sidewalk for people that needed to utilize the sidewalk so they didn't have to walk out into the parking area.
Mhm.
And he indicated that that was indeed the case. And the same thing with Mountain View. They are going to have their regular seating like they had their tables out before in the front there. And so that's going to continue to be how they've always had it in years past. What they want to do is open up in the back and have a tent. And in that tent, they'll have a space, and that gets roped off because they do have an alcohol permit. And so, you know, they would like to extend their alcohol permit to be outside in that tent area, and that would be roped off because now it's just for those that are old enough to be in there for that area. And so they're looking to do that. That part has to come from the selectmen as far as giving them the authority to serve outside.
Now at La Cucina, they have an outside patio now, which I assume they serve alcohol at.
Correct.
So would that require an expansion? Because they've already put their tables out on the grass up there.
Right. So that's right. So that theirs would require an expansion from their. That's my understanding, that they would require an expansion from their current ability to serve on the patio.
Okay. And then Mountain View has alcohol inside.
Correct.
Would they be requesting to serve alcohol where traditionally just families sit to have their ice cream?
No, they're going to keep the front area where they traditionally have had the seating to families and ice cream. And in the back is where they want to put up a tent and have that the area that they would be able to serve the alcohol.
So they do want to expand outside the building for that.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
the fence around it?
And there'll be a fencing so that people can't come and go.
Okay.
You know, you have to be seated. You know, you have to, however they're going to handle that end of it.
Okay.
Yeah, I just lost my train of thought there for a second. But they had explained about. Oh, the other thing too with that is you can't expand larger than what your original capacity is.
Mm.
So whatever their capacity is for seating on the inside, they can't expand that on the outside.
Okay. And Casabella is announcing that they're opening their patio outside seating tomorrow, but they don't have a permit yet, correct?
They haven't, I don't think, Jane just texted me and she asked me if the meeting started, so maybe she's having difficulty getting on.
I'm on.
But, oh, you're there? Hi, Jane.
Hi, Lori. I just left Casabella. and they just got their application. He said he would drop it off first thing in the morning if we would be able to look at it.
Okay.
There's another connected matter here. Becky just came on. She had sent over a message to me this morning about waivers. Apparently some communities are requiring those who, let's say, visit the senior center
Yeah.
to sign a waiver. And one question would be, is that something we would want to pursue? Should I have town council draw that up? And Becky, are you all set? Can you talk now?
I actually need like 3 minutes. I'm in a situation where I can't speak right now. I'm in the car, but I will be available in 2 to 3 minutes.
Okay, fine.
Sorry.
Well, it's a simple issue. Do we want people to sign waivers or take a chance that someone's going to contract COVID-19 and then sue the town?
Well, this is at the senior center, though, not at the.
She was only referring to the senior center.
Right,
But
okay.
it's here as well. It's after opening of the public building.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I mean, I think
Ham, could you wander down and see if Eva's there?
it might apply to the town as well.
What are you saying, that if we approve restaurant X to have outside seating and someone contracts COVID, they could sue us because?
No, I thought it was
we're
strictly
talking
public
only
building.
those who come into public buildings.
Okay, all right. So that's a different issue.
Which isn't yet any.
No,
Right.
no, not at all.
Okay,
Now,
so
what about the town meeting? Because we're endorsing that and the election following. Would that be something?
But we have two issues we're discussing
I
at the
think
same time.
there's another issue with town meeting, and that is, can you legitimately
No.
restrict attendance at town meeting? You know, it seems like it's like voting. The courts really don't tolerate any kind of fettering of your right to vote
Well,
or your right to.
I thought we had solved that we were going to count coming in. If it exceeded what we felt was the proper thing, the moderator will recess the meeting.
Yeah. Oh, he can do that.
Right, you can do that, so that's the way it is. If you
That's
can't-
right.
If it exceeds it,
Right.
we'll just
He
recess
does. Yeah.
and go to the 1/12,
Yeah.
or we can recess for 2 weeks
2 weeks, yeah,
and
right.
then resubmit.
So that's
I'll
part.
speak to town council tomorrow on the whole issue of waiver. I'm sure there's a standard form
Mhm.
Right.
if you want to utilize it.
Well, I just want to know if it's where, I think the senior center one, that's down the road. We haven't opened municipal buildings yet.
Right.
But I'm concerned that it might apply to the election and the town meeting. That would be a question.
So let's get back to the restaurants.
Yeah.
Does the board need to vote something? Do we need to vote these applications? Do we need to review them?
Well, that's what I'm asking. I don't think, I would like the ability for the different departments to kind of go through a checklist, and if everything works out, then let's give them, you know, the streamlined ability to get it done. But it would only be the alcohol part that we would not have, the Board of Health doesn't have control over that. They would have to get that through you and at whatever process is set up for you to do that. There is something from the ABCC that was dated, I think, June 1st, and with reopening the workplace. So the ABCC approval is not required, you know, and it kind of just goes through a few things that I guess is allowing the local town to be able to provide the ability to expand to the outside.
The one thing I would have a concern about is back when the board allowed La Cucina to have outside sales, Casabella or McLeod's, whatever it was at that point, because they were in a controlled space. I'm a little, I like what Mountain View is talking about with the tent / beer garden type look. I'm a little concerned with the tables that are out on the grass, unless there's some type of, what's they called, storm fence or hurricane fence or something around that. I think that would be appropriate before expanding service out there. Because right now you're just wandering out. And
If you look at,
we wouldn't allow it during a regular situation. That wouldn't be where we'd allow service. So,
John, excuse me, look at their application. I think they said there's a garden fence
going in.
that goes around it, I believe, but I'd have to look at that application. Bob has it.
No, I'm just making that comment. I did see, as Don did, the tables and chairs out there if their plan is to put a fence on, just like Mountain View's plan is to put a fence up, then I would say I would feel much better about it at that point. So I would make a point in the application, it should show they have a controlled environment location, etc.
Let's see.
Because that's consistent with what the board has done in the past for other applications prior COVID.
Garden fencing has been installed to ensure distancing on the grass walkway.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Didn't
It's
see it
not.
yet. I haven't seen it yet, but
That would suffice.
they say
Yeah.
they're gonna
Yeah.
do, okay. The other thing is, we're not gonna charge a fee for this, but I would like everyone to keep their hours because this is extra work that we can get reimbursed
Mhm.
from our CARES Act funds, so.
Oh, yeah.
And also, Cliff has set up a special account for this purpose. He did send a message to everyone that I'm aware of.
Yeah.
Everyone should know that this is the account that to be used to calculate and save those the costs and so forth for this kind of activity.
Okay. So do we need a motion to say we approve the streamline?
Yeah, it's either the streamline or else then you would do it yourselves at your meetings, but that would
Put them
cause
off a
some
week or
delay.
so, right?
Right.
So
All right.
streamline process would be certainly under Lori and Board of Health.
So we're authorizing the Board of Health agent
Yes.
to authorize these things.
Right, yes.
All right, so I'll make a motion to authorize Lori McCool, Board of Health agent for the town of Hamden, to approve applications as under our guidelines as presented tonight.
Second. All in favor? Aye.
And then I just, the other part would be, are you going to
The
be?
liquor part,
The liquor part, right?
right. So would you, Bob, tomorrow look what the streamline thing is with the ABCC, if, you know, and
So
I'll
that
email
is like to also get the buy-in for, and Jeff is still on, but get the buy-in for the chief as well.
right.
Yeah. So,
And fire, yeah.
All right, Bob will check that out tomorrow.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Carry on.
Lori, try and stay busy somehow. Just find something to do.
Yeah, she's such a slacker, that girl.
Yeah.
All right, back to the election procedure.
No Eva down the hall?
Okay.
They're
All
across.
right.
Maybe they're somewhere.
Can we have and the other thing I have on here is see there? The other thing I have on here is a COVID-19 update, just in terms of, there was some concern about the 83 cases in town, and I explained to some people that that's a cumulative number of cases from March 1st,
Not active.
not
Correct.
active. But there was some question about how many were nursing home, how many were, so. Do we have
I
any?
believe my count today was 67 nursing home.
67 in the nursing home?
Yeah,
So,
big number.
Cumulative, not necessarily active, right?
I'm sorry?
Cumulative, not necessarily an active number.
Correct. No, that's since March 1st.
Okay.
It's not just this week. Yes, correct.
And we, in the terms of town employees, everyone's got the proper equipment still. We have no problem getting PPE equipment, and when the fire department or the police have to go out. Chief, are you there?
Yeah, no, we have we have a pretty good stockpile at this point.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Anybody else have any questions on that?
Nope. Thank you, Chief.
Okay, back to the election procedure. How we doing?
I think we're looking good. Mary Ellen is actually trying to help us scout up some poll workers. That's kind of an issue because it's a long day. With a 13-hour window that we're open, you've got to consider setup time and the ballot count after. It's a very long day. So Michelle's trying to get shifts so nobody's exposed to everything all day, every day. That's going to be tight because we're having a little trouble finding people who are willing to work the polls, but more and more are coming to surface, which is a very good thing. And there are some that are diehard that will be there regardless, which is also good. We do have some requests that came in for ballots today, and we have that information on the website.
Yep.
Under the clerk side, you have both the applications and the registration deadline, whatever. So things are looking good. We do have the shields, the tables. Paul's putting those into place. He'll have those ready. Masks, sanitizers. We actually were lucky. Jane found sanitizers at Home Depot of all places. So we're set with that. We can sanitize everything. The golf pencils, they come like 100 in a box. Use it, throw it in a little box. We can sanitize them again and use them. I can't see throwing them away because they're usable. It's just, what does it take to sanitize them, right?
Oh, come on, give the people a gift. Take your pencil home.
If they want to take them home, knock themselves out.
There you go.
Yeah.
You-
Yeah, COVID.
Eva,
Hey,
you
what
had,
is a password frame? No, I'm sorry.
Eva, you had mentioned possibility of some high school students also helping out.
I know in Ludlow, they had the Honor Society was working at the polls because they needed credit for civic duty,
Oh, okay.
community service, whatever. And it worked out well for them. So as a matter of fact, Mary Ellen lined up a couple of graduates who may be willing to work. And I'm trying to find people who might know who to talk to at the school. I think I might just email maybe Maura Ryan or someone and say, hey,
Sure.
they may know someone who would be willing. They may be able to give me a list of kids here in town. But yeah, I think we're actually in decent shape. We've got a layout so that people will walk in and out without crossing paths. The only hitch would be if we have someone who is handicapped who would have to go out the same door. Other than that, we've got everything laid out so we are socially distanced within. The booths are going to be spaced 6 feet apart. And we may set up 2 at a time and vote on one and block the other, and then vice versa after we've sanitized it. But yeah, I think we've got it covered, and I think that let's just get it over with. I know a lot of communities have done them successfully, and they follow the same methods. As a matter of fact, that's where some of the ideas have come from. So, so I think we're in good shape.
East Long Meadow just had theirs last week, and did they run into any issues really, or just?
I haven't heard of anybody that's run into issues yet, and again, we're following pretty much the same protocol that they have. So I feel pretty good about it. And Michelle's good. She's honored me. And she's a nurse, so nothing's going to get past her. She's been working with COVID patients. So, yeah.
Well, I think I speak for the board when I say I really appreciate even what you've done and the town moderator and all the people who worked on this to make this happen as expeditiously and efficiently as possible. And we appreciate everything as usual.
We said before, even when the town hall was closed, we knew people were coming in because they were dedicated.
Yeah.
Oh,
You were here,
I'm
Jane
not
was here.
dedicated. I do just want to do
This is live, so I didn't want to use that word. So
I did just want to do a hitch, however. I was down there trying to print a number of absentee ballots, and the Rizzo machine is making marks on some. I've been able to salvage most of them, but I bet I've got 100 that I will have to cast aside because you can't have any extraneous marks on a ballot. There's just, that's not going to happen. I would never let that happen. So I may be printing them off the printer that I have for the time being, but that's, and it's just, I mean, I had most of them done, and all of a sudden it's like, but I think we can get around that. We've got enough printers to make that happen.
There's only 3,000 registered voters. It shouldn't take that long.
No.
The printer I have is a state machine, and we use it for elections. We print up all of the voter lists and things, and so it's
It takes some more time to fold
worthy,
them.
it's capable, and it's easier for me to just be able to do it as I can. So and I hate to say it, but I have better control over them too. So I don't want to let them get away.
So do you fold them by hand, or do you have a folding machine?
These little paws, I will get some help in the office like here, but I don't like to let them go anywhere. The folding machine that I have doesn't make that fold. That was one of the reasons I was looking for one, because that gets a little tedious, but so we do everything in house. It's just it's much more cost effective.
Okay, I think you've got it pretty well organized for coming forth.
Yep.
The big thing is we talked earlier about getting the signs out, on the corners, things like that.
Well, I was mentioning before, I go to East Long Meadow, and I know where their town meeting is going to be, and I know when their elections, because they've got those sawhorses at those major intersections, and I think those are really beneficial. We've got the other signs too, and I think that has made a difference in
Mhm.
making people aware, yeah.
Yeah.
I've talked about too, that the board down by the flagpole by the mini mall, I know it belongs to Park and Rec, but I don't see why they wouldn't just
Yeah.
put town meeting, town election dates up there. That would be beneficial, just to make people like, oh my God, yeah, that's coming up Monday. Just as a little wake up call.
Well, if I put out an email, we're gonna, obviously get them out of the stockpile and get them out and make sure they're right. We have some, unfortunately, have different dates because of special town meetings, but we have the standard ones. Hey, it's Monday,
Town
be
meeting.
there.
Yeah.
So,
And that's the thing, a date isn't as necessary as annual town meeting Monday night or annual election Monday. Just to make people aware of the fact that it's happening. And if they have a question about a date, trust me, I can get calls. I've answered a few of those.
And your home phone number was what?
Oh, they find it.
I'm sure they do.
Yeah, they have. That's not a problem, but yeah.
And I'll ask the same question that I asked about the town meeting. Are you going to need, do you think you need extra police just to?
One of the reasons I wanted an extra police officer for the election, and I've already talked to Kathy about that, is just to ensure social distancing and make sure that people are sanitizing their hands. And now thinking about it, these are things that we could probably use other people for. It's just it was difficult to find help.
Yeah.
And the police officer like making that extra money, so they're usually
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Willing. So I don't think that we'll need it. Well, as long as you. Sorry.
So if you need him, you'll talk to Kathy or the chief about it.
Well, I already talked to her about the election.
Okay.
But I really, thinking about it, I don't know if we're really gonna need them, because she said she would try the
Yeah.
second month. I'm gonna go with it. I'd rather be safe than
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah.
But I think it's just a matter of getting someone to do it.
Okay.
And having an officer there, he just carries that authoritative
Yeah.
figure. So even if, even if we need someone else to reinforce what someone said, if it's officer, can you come over here? So,
All right.
yeah. But I think town meeting, Vic brought some information forward that I thought was helpful too, that he spoke to Ricky about. I think he sent some of the changes in again. About if we only allowed voters into the auditorium, and we can do that. If we don't, and the cafeteria, we wouldn't need voter cards, so that would be part of the hands-free type of thing. So you keep the doors open, no voter cards, and instead of numbering chairs, just assigned seating. You can have an usher who's going to say, "Here you go, sit down." I think people will be considerate enough once they sit in the chair that they're not going to get up and sit in another one, because they know that it's been contaminated, so to speak, and other people will be wary of sitting there. But yeah, I don't think we're going to have a real problem with that either. The way he's got the design, and yeah, I think it's all in.
All right.
I think once you get the quorum, Eva, I would be shocked if the town meeting went over 30 minutes. Seriously.
Like
that. What?
I said I would like that.
I know.
I think too, we talked about it earlier. One thing Bob always did, and don't get me wrong, I like Bob, but he would take a vote on every line item. And I never really understood that, because it's not necessary. You go over the line items. If there's an amendment, that's a vote. I move to amend line item to whatever, read however much, and you're only amending the amount, and you vote on that. Then the vote would be to approve the amended warrant article budget altogether, but not on every line.
I know he was voting the subsections, like he would vote general government, he would vote general town services.
Which again was never necessary.
No.
There's a vote if there's an amendment. So if you're going over each line and someone yells, "Hey." But
it is a good recap. Where do we stand? Stuff like that. So,
it's a recap, and you go over them, and it allows people to voice their opinion if they choose to. But to actually vote on every line item is not. Even
I don't think we did every line. I think Bob voted every subsection, which was 5 votes, 5 extra votes.
Right. Well, it'll be Rick's call. So
you're paid by the hour.
Right.
Okay. You're right.
All right. Anything else? Good. We're good to.
Robocalls, I think that Bob is already on top of that. And again, with regard to taxes, I apologize. I was not aware, and I've just gone through so many things, and maybe I did see it originally, but I was not aware that we had to notify people in writing about the change. It makes only because it had been something it's been in the time in the reminder, and it's been everyone knows it here, and I've gotten phone calls. I didn't realize that we had to notify people again. I think that a robocall is our best option there. It's just much less time consuming and much more cost effective, and if there's no real necessity to send out something else. Because we're talking about motor vehicle bills about 6,000, you're looking about another 2,500 with regard to personal property and real estate bills. That's a lot of mailing. If it's not really necessary.
Well, I encourage the robocall. The
Yeah.
problem is, of course, is you can't guarantee 100%. Not everyone signed up, as well as something in the Times as well, because everybody gets that.
Yeah.
That's the key part right
And I
there.
understand that not everybody's online, but it does still,
Right.
putting something in the Times covers you, so to speak.
Right.
It is locally distributed. Everybody gets it, whether they choose to read it or not.
Mhm.
I have people that tell me all the time, they throw out their tax bills. Oh, I don't care. My house is escrowed. My mortgage is escrowed. That's good. Did you see you were carrying a balance because your mortgage company sold your building? And, that's the only time they look at them.
Mhm.
But, so even sending them something from the tax collector isn't going to ensure that people are
Yeah.
going to read it.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, they're out there.
All right.
We're good?
Good.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you.
Go home.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to finish that and good night.
Thank you.
All right. Anything else on that?
No, Becky is, if you have any questions
Okay.
about the waivers.
I think what we decided to do in the waivers is that we're going to have Rose come up with something, and we'll do that for the senior center. And we should have it also. I don't know what Parks and Rec's going to do about opening up the spray park and all that kind of stuff. So we should have something for them too, I would think.
Yeah, but again, same thing. Is a waiver required for town meeting and the town election? Because if the thing is to get a waiver because you're going into a public building, how is that different? So I'd like some definition on that before Monday if we can.
All right. And Ms. Moriarty, what are the other towns doing with the senior centers?
Sorry. There aren't any that are opening at this point. Everyone is doing things remotely. But there are some in the eastern part of the state that we're discussing the waiver. So that's why I wanted to bring it to the board's attention at this point. So it's not, at the last minute, we're trying to come up with something. There is concern that, we won't really be able to guarantee that the building is completely sanitized or completely disinfected. We're going to do the best that we can. It will be clean, but the waiver was just a suggestion that it may, kind of hold us harmless in the event that someone gets sick and then they say, well, the only place I went was the senior center, so it must be their fault.
Are you going to continue the grab and go, or are you going to have al fresco dining?
We're going to continue grab and go. And there's some grants being applied for to continue that program. But we are pretty sure that we're slated to continue through the end of August at this point.
Okay.
And our numbers have jumped up over 100. So we have about 110 people that come through most days, Tuesday through Friday. We added Friday as a fourth day.
All right, good.
The other point about waivers is, would you ask her if a waiver does indemnify us? I'm not sure that it does. So ask Rose if that question. If you get a waiver, I think they can still sue if they wanted to.
Yeah.
But it would be good to check with the lawyer on that.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Becky.
Thank you. Action ambulance contract?
It is. It's done. It's finished. It's ready for signature. And there was one little tweak as of this morning. The action management has said to all of us, to Rose, myself, whatever you want, put it in there. And that's what Rose did. She had one little issue this morning. She said it's worked out. And so it's ready for signature. I don't have the document here. Partly because I use this in here today, this afternoon, and I can't print. If you want to vote to approve it, I can sign it, or you can vote to approve it and sign it next
Leave it
week.
here.
Either
Or
way.
we'll just leave it in the thing. It'll come on and
Not
sign
much
it.
to do next week before the town meeting. So.
Can you send it to me?
I can't do anything here. I'm not connected.
I noticed in the contract that it had quarterly meetings and monthly reports and response times. Are we gonna set up procedures for that so that we know that at the first of every month, we're gonna get this report, or the 15th or something like that?
I think they would go to the chief of police, and the selectmen would determine how much of that they want to see.
That's what we said last time.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
So I would think we want it periodically, but we can decide how
Okay.
often.
Right.
But I mean, I think it's good to keep on time, especially the response times and the you know, their monthly reports there.
So if you'll vote to approve it, I'll convey that, and we'll get the document for you to
So
sign.
what was the tweak before we
So-
vote to approve him?
It was,
You can't even remember.
no, if someone contracts COVID and is transported and is indigent, would the town apply to the state to get for the reimbursements that we're getting under the CARES Act? I said, no, that's, you know, we can't do that. And so that was the issue. I mean, maybe we can. I didn't want to commit to that. You know, if it happens,
We'll worry about it.
we'll try it, but I didn't want to make a commitment in a written document that would put the town on the hook. So if you want to vote it, and then I'll put it, we'll get the contract and I'll put it in the mailroom, and you can sign. That way your names are on it. So if it doesn't work well.
You'll be out of town.
No.
You have ambulance service.
That's how I have ambulance service,
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Any motion?
Have I already moved to approve this like 7 times ago?
Yeah, sounds good again.
So basically, you're gonna print it out and have us sign it.
Right.
Right.
Thank you. Someday, this year.
Okay.
This year.
Be done tomorrow morning.
So you want a motion, John? So I move that we approve the agreement between the town of Hamden and the Action Ambulance Service as recommended by our attorney and our town administrator.
Second,
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
subject to funding. And that's in there already.
What?
right? Subject to funding.
Subject to funding, that's in there, yeah.
I did have the Thornton Burgess roof on the agenda, and also the highway department's work plan, Larry Tuttle's plan, and the asphalt roller, but we wanted to limit the agenda, so I took it off.
Already for the guys,
Yeah,
Good.
took it off.
All right, we have our interviews with the,
Interview started at 6:30.
yeah.
Is Pat Farrell there?
I haven't seen that. I saw Mr. Dowd.
Oh,
Okay.
Pat is first. I told everybody to be here at 6:30.
Is everybody zooming in for Wednesday night?
I am.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to make that happen.
We're having a regional selectmen's meeting hosted by Long Meadow on Wednesday night. We did post for that, right?
We hosted last time.
No, we did post for that,
Oh,
right?
post.
I'm not sure, there's no decision to be made, so I'm not sure technically if we need to post. We're just all in attendance basically. And
Observing.
it's a bit of a, historically, a bit of a gripe session. Oh, or the state could be giving us more money. You all agree? Yeah, they should, yeah. And those feds too, yeah, those guys. So, but we do share ideas and stuff. But in terms of posting the meeting, there's never a vote or an official action. Okay.
All right,
So, and you're gonna put them in the office over there.
6 feet
And
apart.
Pat Farrell is the first one in.
Take your phones. Did you print out those suggested questions for us? Are they in the packet?
Sure.
That's good.
No, I didn't.
Oh.
So I sent them to you.
Yeah, you did.
Well, let's see. Do you have yours? Anybody have theirs?
I am.
Yeah, well,
Maybe Sam, can you just make another copy?
I got it.
Where are my copies? Are you ready for
Mhm.
I don't think you need the second sheet, maybe. You don't want 'em.
So the camera cover, it doesn't cover the applicant then?
No.
Yeah.
If that applicant sits in that chair, yes, I can tilt the camera a little bit and,
But the only way they could do was, I mean, I have my iPad as a participant, who would like position, so they would be.
You can see them.
But I would get interference, we've heard that before.
I'll,
Camera thing.
let me,
You can see
camera
them.
just a little bit, and if the person sits there, we can
Right here?
get them in, yeah.
Use my iPad again.
You guys are set, right?
Yep. Hi, Todd.
Hey, Pat.
Hi, Pat.
Sort of.
Nice to meet you.
If you would move in close to the table, we can get you,
On
on the camera. There we go.
Okay.
One of the lucky ones with a haircut. Yeah.
Okay. Nice. Well, welcome. Welcome. Just the interview for the position of chief of the part-time chief of the Hamden Fire Department. Our first applicant, our first interviewee is Patrick Farrell. So, Pat, you want to give us a quick synopsis about yourself? Go ahead.
So as I said, Patrick Farrell, been on the fire department here for about 14 years. Born in Springfield, moved to Hamden. Majority of my life was here in Hamden. I currently moved just over the line to the town of Wilbraham. Again, I got on the fire department here in Hamden in 2006. Been on all the ranks, started as a probationary firefighter, moved to a firefighter, lieutenant, captain, and then now I'm serving as the deputy chief of the department. As far as education, attained EMT basic level. I'm also a paramedic, AOS certified. Certifications, instructions through the Mass Fire Academy, fire officers, instructor, safety accountability, incident command. And just kind of, I'm also a career firefighter for the town of Wilbraham. And got a beautiful wife, a beautiful daughter, homebody, and that's kind of where I'm at.
You mentioned the DJ part.
And also a small DJ business.
Give me, can you tell us your strengths? What do you think your strengths would be?
Strengths in the fire service or just in general?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, I personally think I'm a leader. I think I'm respected. I'm a go-getter. I like to go after anything and get it done. Hardworking, creative, kind of just, just an all-around, try to be the good guy that everyone respects, everyone knows, and treat people fairly and decent.
Mary Ellen, you have a question?
And what are the areas that you'd like to improve upon?
Well, I mean, there's always room for improvement in everything. So, as far as the chief's position, I didn't think this position was coming so soon. It was something I envisioned of maybe being someday. So as I get growing older and growing as a firefighter and growing as an officer, improving with understanding and working with, town advisory and just learning that whole, not game, but that whole, how it works, how it plays out, and just becoming, better with politics, I guess, ultimately.
And what would you say differentiates you from other candidates for chief?
I mean, like some of us, we've made the major commitment to this fire department. We haven't left. We stuck here, for me personally, the last 14 years. When it was strictly volunteer, I was here. When there's a call stipend, I'm here. the dedication that is, I think, proven through the years to this department to make it better, to make myself better. My network is pretty huge. I've worked for a few other fire departments throughout the years, East Long Meadow, where, again, I work on Wilbraham. People I started with are now chief officers, captains, lieutenants, so my network of availability, if we need something, a training prop, an SOP, anything, it's usually a text away to find the answer we need to better this department. So definitely a networking thing is definitely one of my strengths.
The budgeting process, Pat, what's your familiarity with that?
You get money and spend it, and
just like home, huh?
Right, pretty much. You check the account every day and you see what you have and you plan out. What are you going to need? What can you predict? And some stuff you can't. Any more to that, or you just want me to?
No, I just didn't know if you have familiarity with planning the budget in a municipal environment. Where we talked about you pretty much get one bite at the apple, and that's going to last you the whole year.
Yeah. So Chief Poulin has been, we've been working hand in hand over this last year, and he's, put me under his wing and kind of let me in on, as a mentor, kind of showing me everything. So I'm familiar with the accounts. I know what they're used for. This year, as we've, been meeting in the past weeks, the budgets look pretty good, and we have some challenges coming in the future. But, like I said, the money comes in, and if you need more, you need more. But you need to be creative as a chief. That's your job, to be responsible and find ways to get money from different sources and just work together to get that line to zero, not negative.
What do you see as the future of a small town fire department? They got shrinking budget, you got constraints with budgets, you got shrinking volunteers or call people.
So again, being creative with your recruitment and retention. This town, has progressed. I don't want to say we're stuck between conservative and progressive, but the fire service has grown from horse-drawn carriage to fire apparatus that's $1 million to taking on EMS. So this particular, we need to look at the future. We need to look at a capital plan, a 1-year plan, a 5-year plan, and personally being in the business of Wilbraham and seeing the rewards and seeing the profits that are out there. Not that we're in the business to make money, but to justify why we have firefighters and and moving towards an ALS ambulance service is definitely the future of fire service. You look at every surrounding town around us, and that's kind of the direction it's gone.
Obviously the big subject in the past couple of years has been the need for expansion at the station, plus expansion of the fleet, if you will. What are your thoughts on that?
The biggest problem I have with the station right now is we got to think of the health and safety of the firefighters, not only the 3 career people, but the call department. A major priority of mine and currently Chief Poulin's is getting a diesel exhaust system in there. If you've been in the station or if you've toured it, you can see it's getting old. It's getting, there's some issues. It's not cost efficient. It costs a lot to heat it. There's no cooling system. The bathrooms aren't ADA. There's a lot of issues. But the big one that really bothers me is this, when we start those trucks, 30-year-old trucks, it puts out a lot of diesel fumes, and cancer is, an epidemic in the fire service, and starting those trucks, kicking off that exhaust, that's a major issue. So finding a way to get that in there, finding a way to get the building, I guess, modified to current stuff, it's definitely a priority for anyone who takes this position, I would say.
I do like the steps you and Chief Poulin have taken, for instance, the cleaning for the fire gear, which is, I think, speaks to what you were talking about there. Can we remove any sources of something that might be a problem?
Right, yeah, so I mean, that was received off a grant, so, whether the firefighters go into a fire, you're getting all the carcinogens on you that needs to be washed. Again, even starting those trucks, it's kicking off some nasty stuff that washing will only do so much.
Talking about the carcinogen, the cancer epidemic in the service, we're going to have 8 up and running solar facilities at some point in the near future. What's the process for fighting those fires?
Well, you gotta, they kick off a lot of power, obviously. So, in the past, I think Chief Pullen's working on the water supply. So, we can figure out, we can write pre-plans, and a pre-plan is a standard thing for the fire department where you say, you have this much electricity, you get all the facts, you have all the contacts of everyone that needs to be notified there. We show up, we know how to shut it off, master switch, kill switch, and then your flow rate, which is measured, predetermined by how much heat that's going to give off and how much water you're going to need, how many engines you're going to need, pumping so much water per minute. So that's a pre-plan. That's one of my projects I've been working on now, is pre-planning our major structures in town, the mini mall, the housing authority.
And do we have pre-plans in place for a number of these already, or it's all in the starting stage?
It's in the starting. Our new hire, Brandon, he asked for a project. It was something I had been working on myself, and he asked to help with. So now that the inspections are going to start up, we're going to kind of pre-plan. We have pre-plans for like water sources, so you could say any town, any street in the town, and I'd tell you where to go get water. But you can have all the pre-plans in the world, but things just get chaotic when it's a fire.
What about the solar panels on the houses? How does that affect you?
Right. So as a command, right, for the chief, you're the commanding officer. That's part of your 360. You show up, you look at the house. If there's not snow on them, or it's you need to get eyes on the 360. So you walk around the house, you look for that shut off, kill the power if needed. And then look where your fire is. Is the fire in that attic? If it's in the attic, you need to be very cautious of putting people in that second floor, because it's got a lot of weight added to that roof, could come crashing down. So you need to be the chief. You need to have a game plan, a pre-plan, deliver it and keep the guys safe. That's number one.
I'm gonna go back to the big facilities again.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of. What if the panels are damaged? There's
So,
chemicals
I drive around town sometimes and say, hey, what if a car crashed through that fence and hit that panel? What do you do? And these are things I think about, and you got to address them as they come. But again, shutting the power off, making sure it's safe, and then treating a patient or you got to identify what exactly is going on. Is it a malfunction? If it's malfunction and there's no harm to any property or anybody, we're going to leave it, and we're going to call the property owner or the management company and seek expert advice. They should have contact information for us to, and the fire academy offers classes where they come out on it, but you can keep training on it.
How do you switch gears a little bit? How would you what do I want to say? How would you seek to develop a pool of qualified call firefighters? Seeing everyone's involved with everything else, but
yeah, that's definitely been not a struggle, but we advertise that we are looking for firefighters, and every so often we get applicants, and we get some that are great and some just try it. It's a major commitment, and it's been said before, you look at all your PTOs, your Cub Scouts, all your committees, organizations, I mean, numbers are down in all those. Everyone's lives are so busy, and to ask someone to dedicate every single Monday and whenever there's a call to join us, it's very hard. The best way I think we can is find those individuals who may be looking for a career change, may always want to be a firefighter, maybe a firefighter somewhere else that lives somewhat close and wants to come over and help us, and kind of recruit those people to help us. We're in a good position now as far as numbers and where people stand in their rank, where we have a good solid number, 10 years left before retirements, I would say, start happening. But just making it equipment's a big thing too. When you say, hey, Hamden's got a brand new tanker, or Hamden's got a gear washer, or they just got new Jaws of Life. Firefighters like to play with the toys. They like to come over, and so that's that draws people in. It really does. You look at
So you're full time in Wilbraham.
Correct.
You have a little bit of a DJ business on the side. You got a family.
Right.
How are you going to balance the?
You just do. This last year, in its entirety, has been a major commitment to this town and doing the things I've done, working under Ed. did it because I wanted to do it. I like being the deputy. I like being in the rank. There's a lot of projects that weren't done in the past that Ed kind of gave me the free reign to take on and do to only better and keep us safer. You know, it is very hard, especially with a 15-month-old home, but my wife is great, and she knows, you know, she doesn't like the tone going out at 3 a.m. when the baby just fell asleep, but, you know, I say sorry and she lets me go. You know, Christmas morning, baby's first Christmas, we were out for the rolled over car. You know, we were 3 hours late to the Christmas dinner, but I met her there eventually. You know, she got over it, but it's definitely hard, but at some time you need to make for your family and self. And
how's your working relationship with Chief Poulin?
Great, probably as good as you could get. Again, he's been a mentor, took me under his wing. We, you know, there's a lot to do, and I'm sure you guys know, and, you know, especially jumping into it suddenly and taking on the challenges and kind of pretty much learning everything that needed to be done over that year. It was a 2-person job, and, you know, again, he had some major things going on that he needed to do, and he let me take on majority of projects that I felt really needed to be done. And if you go up and ask how the camaraderie is, you know, it's great up there now. It's, you know, people are excited, people are happy, people are itching to get back to training. We haven't trained in 3 months because of COVID, but anyone on that department, there's no attitudes, there's no, it's a very positive.
What size fire department do you think a town of 5,000 needs?
So again, when we were looking at ambulances and figuring out, you know, what we would need, Chief Poole and I, we visited Southampton. Southampton's very comparable to us, and they run a 24/7 fire and EMS service. They utilize all, I guess, on-call people from different departments. We talked to South Hadley District 2, again, slightly bigger population with a college, but they run 3 full-timers who work 24 hours a day and rotate with call people. So 3 people is great. That's a great start for us. We could use 1 more maybe if we wanted to expand out the coverage as far as 24/7, 1 person on, or just 7 days a week. But 3 to 4 is, you know, if you go back and look at the numbers, double calls happen, but they're very rare. But the big thing I've done is kind of make the people here prepared to handle 2 calls at once, 3 calls at once. How do you do that? You take the right apparatus and you keep someone in service, and you're able to manage multiple calls. That's a major thing. So the 3 is good. We always want more. I mean, you look at FPA standards.
You're three from 8 to 4.
3 to 8 to 4, yeah.
And that's okay for the town, or you think that the town should be having 24/7 fire service, or you think?
I think that's definitely in the future, and in my vision, 5 years definitely, especially if we start with the ambulance, if that gets up, and again, we kind of can show the benefits of that. Personally, yeah, and again.
And I do notice that fire departments are changing their mission to become more ambulance oriented, or whatever you want to call that. Is that a good move, do you think? Is it diverting your attention from your real mission? What do you think about that?
Well, the mission's always public safety, right? So it's protect lives, save property, save lives. So again, the staffing is there. There's people to backfill, but you know, statistics show that fires are down. There's better inspections. There's better houses are built a little bit more safer. So if you were to look at the numbers, obviously medical is largely greater than fire calls, fire runs in general. So that's, I think, why the shift has come, you know. But it's hard to see. It's hard to be told, hey, you're losing firefighters for ambulance, but there's means and ways and process that really are set to handle that next call and keep you safe on all aspects, all hazards, any time of the day.
Well, I'm just wondering if in the hiring process, if the emphasis should be ambulance, then wouldn't you hire a different person maybe than you would if you were hiring a fire person, or are they interchangeable?
It's funny because everyone that wants to be a career firefighter knows the path. They know they need to be an EMT. They know they need to go to the fire academy. And then those who are EMTs or paramedics can go to the 3-month fire academy and then become a firefighter. the vice versa is a little bit harder to be a paramedic. It's, you know, you're looking at about 3 years of school in didactics and clinical and stuff like that. But it's well known what
the route is.
what you need to do to get on. You know, you ask anyone, it's, you need to become an EMT, you need to, you know, and Hamden's a great place for these people to start. You know, it's got a department that will take you on, and if you put in the work, will sponsor you to go to the academy. And some leave, but majority of us stay.
Okay.
Any questions for us?
No, I mean, kind of, thank you for having us. Kind of different situation, but
So let's say we choose you to be chief.
Right.
How do you think, you know, you got 2 other people who are in the department who are applying for the job?
I mean, the other two on the department, we all, you know, we're gonna text each other as soon as this is over and say, hey, how'd you do? This is not, you know, it's.
Don't text them before.
No,
Don't the questions.
I gotta get up to training. But we're all, you know, and even prior to, hey, good luck. It's, you know, we all have our strengths. We all have different backgrounds. We all have different visions and things like that. But any one of us, or I mean, I can't speak for the outside individual, but, you know, we're all leaders. We're all in this to better the town, to keep us safe, to be there and, you know, fulfill the duty as the own fire chief. And, you know,
I don't know if this is the right impression, but I get the impression that firemen work at a lot of different places. Like they work
Right.
in Wilbraham, but then they work here. How does that?
I mean, I work 24-hour shifts.
Is that difficult, or?
Again, so I work 24-hour shifts. So I work 24 hours off. I get a day off. And I work another 24. I have 5 off. So I'm only working less than 100 days a year. So that opens up a lot of time for, you know, for firefighters and myself to yes, to have a side business, to landscape, to work in our fire department. It's one of, you know, it's a great schedule.
Hey, that is a benefit. That is a benefit, really.
Yeah. I don't mind it, yeah, especially with summer coming. But
yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys doing this. It's kind of nice to have a formal process. I think this is probably one of the first times that I can remember through the years that this has taken place. But
all right.
Well, it was nice to get to know you.
Thank you,
for
Patrick.
coming in.
I'll be
Handshake.
Not too many chiefs through the years.
What?
Not too many chiefs through the years. So
Okay. Who's this? Michael Hatch.
Sure.
Hello.
Good evening.
Hi.
Good evening. How are
Hi,
you?
Michael.
Hi.
Hi.
Nice to be here. Anywhere?
Have a
Right
seat
here.
right here. You'll be on camera. There's you're being zoomed, and
All right.
Whole town will
people
see.
all over the nation are
Oh,
Tuning in.
tuning in.
They heard he's coming and they're tuning
they
in.
like my choice of mask.
We'll do the official handshake.
Yeah, exactly. It's a little bit of a different time, but I'm certainly glad I can sit with you folks face to face in the same room.
Yeah, it is
First time with an online meeting, first time with a mask. It's nice to be here with you, so thank you.
Go ahead. Tell us a little bit about yourself while we're
Sure.
get started here.
Again, nice to meet everybody. My name is Mike Ash, 38 years old. I'll start with professionally. My career started here about 20 years ago. As a volunteer, I was a senior at Minnetonka, so it's kind of where I got my start. Family history here. I'm a 4th generation firefighter here. I have an uncle that served with the city of Holyoke as well. So it's kind of a big part of who I am and kind of where I grew up. Got deep roots in the community. My family still lives here by and large. We run a small farm up on Bennett and Glendale. Raise the best beef cows you're ever come across. No disrespect, Mr. We're proud of what we do. You know, I got an awesome 16-year-old daughter I'm really proud of. She's winding up her sophomore year at Minchug right now. So in my spare time, you know, I spend a lot of time with her, home improvement projects, working on the farm, and, you know, work out at a local CrossFit gym to keep myself happy and healthy. And that's it. So I'm excited to be here with you folks and kind of talk about what I have to offer.
What are your strengths of the overall?
Overall, I'd say that some of my best strengths are, you know, I'm goal-oriented. If I set my mind to doing something that I believe in, I attack it with determination and some vigor. I got a strong work ethic, you know, from a young age. You know, you don't have to be good to try hard. I've been able to rely on my work ethic over the years to really get me through. I put a lot of time and energy and effort into things that I'm passionate about. And I'm able to stay focused and consistent on things. You know, I don't generally get too high, I don't generally get too low. You know, I expect that with whatever you're trying to achieve, there's going to be ups and downs that come with it. So it's just kind of ride the wave and keep going towards whatever my goals are.
Mary Ellen? Yeah.
What do you think are the 3 most important skills that a fire chief needs to be effective?
So I think some of the basics that a fire chief needs to have, or, you know, anybody in a leadership position needs to be able to communicate. You know, a lot of it's verbal, nonverbal, be able to set some expectations. I think consistency is also important. You know, you need to be measured, you need to be equal. You know, people don't have to follow you. There's a big difference between being a manager and being a leader. And I think in the fire service, it's really important to make that differentiation. So consistency is important. People want to know what to expect from you so they can anticipate and they can, you know, fulfill the task to the best of their abilities. And I think integrity, you know, you're at the top of the food chain. You kind of set the example. You need to walk the walk. So, you know, integrity, I think, is also super important for a leadership position such as fire chief.
Mike, looking, and you've been here a long time.
Yes, sir.
Family involvement. What do you see for the growth pattern or the growth plan, if you will, for the fire department? What would you envision going forward?
Well, I think there's a lot of interesting things going on. I know EMS has been a hot button issue with a lot of changes and a lot of things going on. I know there's some discussions about, I forgot the name of it, the community vulnerability thing that the board is taking up and looking at, you know, thinking about some historic calls that we've had over the years. You know, we have one street that runs east to west across town. So I think that's an awesome initiative. And those, you know, I was excited to see the town taking some action on that to consider that. So at the apparatus acquisitions, EMS is something I have a big role in. You know, my role in the city of Northampton, I came in at the right time. Kind of weird for a department to be starting EMS this late in their history. You know, the 1850s was a long time ago, and first ambulance came in the early 2000s. So I came in at an interesting time to be part of that growth. So I'm excited to be a part of EMS in whichever way it goes. And I think there's a lot of room to assess and evaluate where it's going to go and how it's going to be done. And I get the action ambulance item up earlier in your agenda tonight. So I think that, you know, between the growth, the training is probably another big way that I could contribute as well. You know, you got a lot of commitment from the people up there. They don't have to be there. They choose to be there to serve the community. So I think, you know, training is a way that I could really advance the department. I teach at the Mass Fire Academy. I've been there since 2013. So I'm comfortable with teaching recruits. I'm comfortable with chief officers and right on everybody in between. So, you know, I think that would be some of the biggest ways that I could help grow and advance the fire department would be through the EMS initiative and the training, both new skills and maintenance of old skills of the current personnel.
If you had to ask for a focus for the town to go forward, would it be personnel? Would it be equipment? Would it be the building, if you will, if you had to pick one of the three?
I think it's kind of difficult to differentiate because the apparatus kind of goes with the building. With the fixed footprint that we have there now, the apparatus needs to be built both with wheelbase, ground ladder complements, water tanks, number of axles, and so on and so forth. You might get yourself jammed up in the sense that the size of the building and the apparatus that we have, it might not be able to fit. You know, you might not be able to get what you want. You might have to build, you know, based on that square foot. So I think those are really kind of married together. If I had to pick one, I would pick the building. There's a lot of firefighter health and wellness initiatives that are out there that we just can't address here in town because of the physical structure of the building. Like gear storage is a big issue. The firefighters' gear is stored the only place that it's available along the sides of the apparatus bay. And we don't have an exhaust collection system. So every time that truck starts, there's a big diesel exhaust that just pounds the gear as the trucks come in and out. So if I had to choose one of those issues, I would say that the building would probably be something that should be addressed as a priority item in some capacity.
Right. A question earlier was our current size of staffing. For instance, the 8 to 4. Do you feel that adequate? Do you feel that's something that is something to look at over the next 5, 10, 15 years as the town hopefully grows?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it needs to get constant attention. I think we need to be mindful of kind of our history and where we came from. And that's why I think the data would drive that decision. In my opinion, we have a full-time staff, not because call volume was overwhelming and taxing on the personnel, but because we had a lack of responders. When somebody calls 911, they, are entitled, in my opinion, to a professional and prompt response. And if we don't have anybody available in town because of other work opportunities or, their demands, if they can't respond, mutual aid shouldn't be the end all be all. We should be able to provide for the taxpayers, a reasonable and prompt 911 service. So I think that, there are some gaps on that, while, and from my experience, we're at the 8 to 4 for the full-time staff. There's also kind of a lull sometimes with, people getting ready to go to work. So if you have to be at work at 8 o'clock in the morning and you need to be there, you might not be available to respond from 6 a.m. on, 5 a.m. on. So, I would pay particular attention to those areas as well and consider maybe flexing those shift hours or, as part of a long-range plan.
How would you, how would you develop a pool of call firefighters? People aren't volunteering like they used to. So how would you develop a pool of call people that?
Yeah, so I think a couple of different ways that we could address a lack of responders or on-call personnel would be one, to tap into the schools. I started as a high school kid, and I started with a group of my friends from town, and being able to kind of contribute and learn and grow and have something that was exciting and different than stuff that my friends were doing in a way that I could serve my community was fantastic for me and for the group of us. And a couple of us are still up there. It's kind of cool to see. We're like the old guys now.
You don't know what old is.
He hasn't even been there.
So, I think that, tapping into the high schools, or the high school could be an option. I think the town has been proactive in kind of expanding the residency. For years it was, you're going to live in this zip code, and then they kind of branched out a little bit to try and catch a more broad pool. So I think those are two good ways, but, as a brief answer, is somewhere to tap into new people would be, the schools, and kind of go from there. We can do, like at a more larger union level, there's this fire ops program where, you meet with elected officials, and this is kind of what we do. I thought in the past we could maybe put a different spin on that. It wouldn't be for elected folks, but it would be like, be a firefighter for the day. Like, this is kind of who we are. This is what we do. Maybe it might pique somebody's interest and get them to come on board. So, there's just a lot to it with the financial cost as well. To outfit a firefighter is expensive. So there's a cost component that would go with it. But those are two ways that I think we could potentially draw in some more responders.
So we're going to have 8 solar projects up and running, rather large projects. Firefighting net. What's your view? How do you do it?
Well, it's going to depend on, obviously, access is a big thing for the fire department. If we can't get there, if we can't find it, if we have to delay our entry into any facility, residential, commercial, solar, it's difficult. So I know a little bit about the ongoings with the solar. I don't know about the particulars of, if there's been anything predetermined about site access. But, I would get in there, and if it's a grass fire in a solar field, then I have extra things that I need to be mindful of, but I can get in there and I can put the fire out. It's kind of thinking, without getting too deep into strategies and tactics. We're going to make a decision, is it safe for our personnel to go in, or are we going to maintain a defensive posture, and we're going to fight the fire from some level of distance, whether maybe on an access road versus in between the panels, or, from over the fence line, and we're going to lob water into it. I'm not aware that any of these facilities can have battery storage.
Yeah, a couple of them will in the end.
Which is going to be a little bit of a game changer. From what I've read on the subject, it's kind of a maintain your distance, set up your boundaries, control any runoff if there is, and just kind of lob water from a safe distance, and just kind of in a controlled fashion let it burn, monitor for brush fires or any other structures. Obviously, we'd involve the power company and whomever the responsible party is for the solar field to maintain electricity as well, to mitigate that threat. So it's not still generating, or we can isolate it to at least a single area.
What about the solar panels on the residence?
Those are difficult. Those are very difficult. I understand that the building code, the electrical code has changed with some disconnects as well, but they're always generating power. I applaud any resident who wants to take the initiative for the green energy, but from a firefighting standpoint, they create a pretty significant hazard for us. any amount of daylight and there's still electricity between that panel and wherever that disconnect is. I've experienced the fire.
Even if they shut it off, if it's still sunny, it's.
Right.
Yeah.
And I've read, there's some people out there that say that the emergency lights can create enough from that. So they need AC power to run and generate solar. But from that point to that point, there's still electricity being generated. In my experience, we had one, and there's a national, I guess, recall or bulletin perhaps on-site made connections. The ones factory made are pretty well tested and sound, but on-site are more prone to fail. And this had failed at a connection point under the panel and burned a hole through the roof, started an attic fire in the dwelling. People were displaced for a couple of days, involved a lot of people. I had to get the solar out to take it down. Ventilation, it creates a hazard. We can't ladder the roof to let the heat and the smoke out to make fire attack inside easier. So it's, it's definitely a consideration for the firefighting aspect of things.
What's your background, Mike, in developing a budget? Obviously, working in Northampton, living here.
Yep.
You're probably doing some budgeting with your teaching as well.
Yeah, on the fire academy side, I mean, it's state level stuff. I'm not that high in the food chain there, so I don't have anything to do with the budget. My experience with budgeting has been limited to, I was the president of Northampton Firefighters Local 108 for 2 years, so I ran and managed that budget. 60 wavered between the time, but it was membership in the low 60s to mid 60s. About a $68,000 to $72,000 budget that we would establish and allocate based on our priorities. My current role, as part of my role, is I do the Senior Safe program, so I administer that grant as well. So my formal experience with budgeting is somewhat limited to smaller stuff. When reviewing the town fire department budget, looks like a lot of it is already fixed costs. We're looking at, depending on what you include or exclude, about 80 to 85% already allocated to personnel and training and admin fees. And everything else. So a lot of it's kind of fixed. The intricacies of it are going to be managing the operational side of things, and make sure the equipment gets maintained, the building stays heated, and equipment is up to date to meet the standards. So
What's the Senior Safe program?
So safe program.
You're asking for a particular reason.
Asking for a friend?
A friend of mine who's a senior.
happens to be one, and I thought I'd look into it. God.
I understand.
Yeah, right.
So the SAFE program, student awareness fire education. So it's kind of the program in schools, where we're teaching, fire safety, stop, shop, and roll, don't run around a campfire, swim safety. A few years ago, the state rolled out another program dedicated to the senior population. So what I do with the program is I meet with, stakeholders and partners, the Triad, the Hampshire Sheriffs, the Northampton Senior Services, Northampton Police, and looking at our community risk reduction data, we're able to figure out we have about 2 falls per day, most of which were preventable falls. So for us, we used our data to figure out that we should focus on fall prevention, trips, slips, where we'd go in, we do a home safety visit analysis and check smokes and COs. And surprisingly, we found a lot of people are not up to date on what they should have to be safe in their homes. So
That's a great idea.
yeah.
When can we get them?
So
the money's available. It's all through the grant through the state.
I was looking at your resume, and it's really quite impressive. I mean, the things that you have done and whatever. What is the most meaningful part of it? What did you? I mean, you have all these certifications and all this teaching and all this whatever. So what did you find the most meaningful or the most beneficial?
I'm going to say the most eye-opening and beneficial was the training I did a few years ago on peer support and critical incident stress management. Something that kind of hits close to home. It's kind of one of the things as a younger firefighter, you kind of have that, like, I'm invincible, I'm young, 911 responder, like, I'm here to solve everybody else's problems, and you kind of shine that mirror away and keep the focus off of yourself. So, after not using resources that were available to me at a younger age, and kind of recognizing that I had made a mistake and I'd seen, substance abuse or, other members struggle in different ways from their work, traumatic experiences at work. I took a class through the fire academy to learn how to address that, to be a peer support counselor for somebody struggling.
That's cool.
Yeah, so to kind of, be somebody who can implement some change that, hey, like I do what you do. We wear the same uniform. We have the same experiences. I'm not going to judge you. Your information or whatever you tell me stays here. It stops here. It's not going anywhere else. And I'm here, for the brothers and sisters in the community. So been pretty fulfilling, pretty rewarding. It's not somewhere I thought my career would go when I started, but
Yeah.
you know, to get involved with something like that was a pretty eye-opening kind of thing. There's a lot of great experiences, but that's something that's more poignant for me recently.
So you're full-time in Northampton.
Yes, sir.
You got the farm.
Yes, sir.
You got the daughter.
Yes, I do.
And what about the balance? Family, life, jobs,
Yeah.
part-time?
Yeah. So I told you I do the part-time thing with the fire academy. Those hours are flexible, at my will and desire. I like to maintain some level of commitment to that, just because I think it helps to keep me current in the fire service. It keeps me proficient, especially if I have to teach something that I might not normally do. But yeah, my time is spread, but it's all things that I love. I've been a dedicated member here since I came back in 2018. So I have the time, I have the resources.
What's your shift at Northampton? What's your schedule?
I do a rotating 24-hour shift. So for example, I got out of work this morning. So I worked the 24 yesterday, had Saturday off, and I worked the 24 on Friday. And I go back to work on Saturday. Saturday and Monday of next week. So,
Nice.
I like that schedule.
Yeah, I do back 3 12-hour back-to-back shifts
Exactly. I mean, really.
to get 2 days off.
it's not as glamorous as it sounds, I promise.
You probably don't know the day.
Yeah,
What day is it? Is it?
Yeah, it's kind of like yesterday, today.
Yeah.
Those are the 3 days.
So you have 2 fellow Hamden firefighter applying for this job as well. And if you get the position, you think everyone will be okay?
Yeah, I think so. I wouldn't expect to have any issues with either of those gentlemen. They're both people that I have a lot of respect for, and I'm sure that they would say the same about me. We all went into this knowing that there's only going to be one job. I wouldn't expect that it would be divided amongst 3 people, but we all know that going in, and somebody's going to get it, and whoever that person is going to get the full support of everybody else, and I wouldn't anticipate that would be an issue at all.
There's a lot of cancer with firefighters.
Mm-hmm.
Is there something we can do here that we're not doing that?
Yeah, there's a few things that take a big step recently with that gear extractor.
Mm-hmm.
To be able to wash your gear routinely. I'd already mentioned before about the diesel exhaust. When we name diesel exhaust, it's a familiar thing. It's not really scary to us. But when you look at the particulates and the chemicals that diesel exhaust is comprised of, it's carcinogen, unknown, and it changes your mindset a little bit. And without kind of digging to that next level, it's not as scary unless you have that information. Another thing that I would like to see done on the health and wellness initiative is EMS has become a bigger component of the fire department operation. I think we should investigate looking into a personal, like a regular clothes washer like we have at home. So if somebody's exposed to bloodborne pathogens through the course of their duties, they're not covered in, germs and grime and body substances, and then they have to get back in their personal vehicle that they share with their family to then go home, to then, bring whatever that yuck and junk is back to their families and back to their house. So I think it would be, a big benefit to be able to find a way to address that, and obviously wash it in something different than we use to get the carcinogens from structure fires. In the gear, PFAS, PFOAs, and all those other things are pretty hot issues now as well. So I think, if we could address, the gear, the cleanliness issue, which is, in some regards, addressed, but, to think about it from a medical side, uniform side.
Do you have one of those things like they have in the police station? They have the big shower thing?
No, but I know what you mean.
Like an emergency shower or like a decon?
Yeah, they have a decon shower, right?
Yeah, we have a shower in the building,
but not that kind of like high.
But not like a deluge or like a gross decon.
Did you use one of the hoses on the guy?
Yeah, we could, and that's one of the proactive steps the department has taken is to put together a bucket. So we do kind of gross decon, which is get all the really yucky fire stuff, insulation, particulates. We leave that at the scene. It's got a garden hose, it's got a brush, it's got a neutral detergent soap, and leave as much yuck at the scene as you can, so you don't bring it back to the station and kind of cross-contaminate the apparatus on the way home and then the building. And that cycle continues. So.
John, do you have any other questions?
No.
Really?
I just noticed that the fire departments are changing to becoming ambulance services. Yes. Do you like that move? Do you think that's a move that can be done, or does it detract from the mission that people went into firefighting for?
Depends on the organization and depends on the people, but it's complicated. I'll say that I firmly believe in fire-based EMS. I work for a professional fire department that does about 7,000 calls a year, with combined resources. One day you're on the ambulance, one day you're on the fire engine, and it just kind of goes round and round. So I believe in fire-based EMS. I believe in cross-training of personnel. Where things get difficult, and which is I would expect as part of a longer range plan would be a conversation that would be had in town at some point, is what's the best allocation of our people and our resources. We have, sounds like Action Ambulance coming in to provide ALS service for the community. There's a plan in place at some point for a backup BLS service to the fire department. The issue, in my opinion, becomes the time and availability of the responders. Showing up as a first responder role in a fly car is a much shorter patient contact or unavailable time than loading that patient in the ambulance, making the transport, doing their patient care transfer at the hospital, decontaminating your truck, getting it ready for service, and coming back. So I think it's part of a broader discussion. I'm not trying to dodge the question, but I think it's part of a bigger discussion about staffing and availability of resources, which kind of goes back to my point earlier about, we have a full-time fire department, in my opinion, because we didn't have any responders during the day, not because call volume was too much for our responders to handle. I hope that's clear. So, I believe in it, and without getting into the numbers and analysis and money a little bit more, again, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to dodge the question.
That's fine. That's the idea.
Okay.
Any other questions? Do you have anything for us?
I was just curious about how the board might view the role of the, maybe expanded role would be a fair way to say it, of the fire chief, maybe what you'd be thinking about for what would be ideal communication for you folks, meeting requirements, attendance, kind of how you folks maybe would view the role of fire chief going forward.
Comments?
Okay, Mr. Chairman.
Well, I think from my personal thing, I'm not a micromanager person, okay, but I do like to have communication. If there's an issue, I like to hear about the issue. If there's a need, I like to hear about the need. I think the chief needs to be very attentive to the budgeting process and needs to be very attentive to the allocation of personnel. And I am concerned about the ability to attract people to fill in those time slots that we don't have. I think it's been working okay right now, but those are the things. And the more I hear you speak and Pat Farrell speak, that this building is a real problem in terms of the exhaust and the need to things. And so I'm very pleased that we got this feasibility study going. We're working on that. The previous board lined that up, and we're working on that. So
I was over there when we were checking mileage for the vehicles. Most of them you have to start up to get a read. It was like being in Beijing. What I imagined Beijing was like
the former Beijing.
Before COVID, yes.
Yeah.
I can imagine that it's a health hazard, a serious health hazard, and ought to have priority for any kind of capital investment.
I would have to say, from my standpoint, Mike, and I'm a guy who likes to visit the fire station.
Absolutely.
You family involvement there for years, and you're quite right. The fire department has changed from the days when, your grandparent, whatever, went out there and changed the brakes and changed the oil, and we just don't have that ability anymore because people's lives are busier. And that's why I think you stated quite succinctly, we have to relook at how we're doing our business model, if you will. But I think, as Don has said, involvement goes both ways. It's a bilateral thing. Share with us, we share back with you. You're right next door, the door is always open.
Great.
So.
And from my perspective, I really value transparency. I am with you. I'm not I like to give the authority to the people that have it, but I like to know what's going on a bit. I have concerns about the the growth of the fire department, and it taking on a life of its own like an amoeba. And I wonder if the town can afford that or wants that. So I think that's a big issue for the new chief, or the chief to undertake to see where everybody's going, and whether they want that and can afford that. Because everybody's always complaining about taxes, and yet they say, okay, but we want. I mean, the building will be expensive, the fire stations, all that kind of stuff. So I think all of those are issues that the new guy would have to deal with, and with us deal with.
Absolutely.
Great.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Please take a minute, look over my resume.
Yeah.
I got a lot of things I'm pretty proud of, and it ranges from the very
The
basics
range
to
is
some
incredible.
very advanced.
Yeah.
So, I try to be jack of all trades because it's kind of like fire services. So I thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for the
Thank
interest in
you.
applying. Thank you.
Best to your family.
Handshake.
Thank you. Handshake. Again, thank you very much.
Yep. Bye bye. It's cold. Are we cold?
A little chilly.
Oh, are you cold now?
I'm free. Are you
A little
freezing?
chilly. I didn't want to. I didn't want to put my shawl on.
Right, that's what I thought. I said, forget my shawl.
We're supposed to
What
be
the heck?
80s the next couple of days. That's not,
We've been cutting back, but this is a little ridiculous.
85, 84, 84, the next 3 out of the next 4 days. Gosh.
Good evening.
Well, the update
Yes,
what guys
Mr. Ed.
How are you?
Long term, big.
Handshake. Yeah. How you doing?
Doing well.
Okay.
A lot cooler in this thing than anything else.
Oh, yeah. We'll start off with the same question. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
I grew up in town. I currently still live in town. I have 2 kids, married. I served on the fire department since 1989.
This thing has a mind of its own. I don't know why it came on.
Yes.
Whatever came on over here.
Yes, since 89.
Yeah, okay.
Well, I worked my way up to position of deputy chief at that time, and stepped down to firefighter to raise my family. I had some, little kids, and then I started back up again, went through the ranks again from firefighter lieutenant to captain, back up to deputy chief. Was training officer for quite some time there, and then now I'm in front of you as interim chief.
So another question thing here. A question, Mary Ellen, while I look for my sheet.
Want to go right to the solar one down there?
What?
Want to go right to the solar one? I think.
Yeah. So this is my favorite topic, solar. We're going to have eight solar things, solar facilities, solar things, solar facilities, up in large ones, and firefighting them. What's the plan?
The plan for firefighting, the solar fields alone, is you want to stay away from them. You don't want to get, obviously, the electrocution side of them. Shut them down, de-energize them, keep people away, and make sure there's no environmental hazards if you do have to use water. Make sure you're not, contaminating any environmental wetlands or rivers or anything like that.
How does the batteries, if someone can have battery storage, how does that change the thing?
Some of the battery storage units that are coming out now are the size of tractor trailers. They're pretty large. They are self-contained in them. They do have fire suppression built into the chambers, which is dry chemical that will contain that fire, hopefully in that cabinet. Again, if it fails or something, the only way to do is cool it down with water. And then again, it's an environmental issue, is that runoff for that water.
Because it'll run out of that, right? I mean,
Yeah.
The phone will-
Again, they are locked in tight. The batteries are locked in tight. The fire suppression is inside the cabinet, so that should physically take care of that.
What about solar panels on a residence?
Solar panels on a residence, if you disconnect the power supply, they'll drop down to 0 volts, and the code says 60 seconds. They generally do it like 12 seconds. The panels themselves are still going to produce power. If you want to kill the power to the panel, the only way to do that is to cover it up with a heavy blanket or something like that to keep the sunlight from hitting it, or any kind of artificial light will also make that energized as well. So you want to be really careful of that. To want to basically stay away from it. The only issue, I guess, for us would be if we had to vent a certain structure for smoke and heat or gases, and they were in the way, then we would just try to look for a different area for that to be done.
Each of these solar installations is different. I mean, they appear different from as you drive by them. Do you have different plans for each one of them, or is it all just general for all of them?
So there's basically 3 different kinds of solar that you'll see. You see the old style solar for the hot water ones on people's houses from way back when. And then you really can't tell by looking at them just from the street, but there's either a line voltage, which means they're feeding 240 volt directly down, or there's a low voltage, they're sending DC current down. So the inverter, basically there's either an inverter in the side of the house or in the basement, which should be marked somewhere on the outside of the house for first responders to shut down. Again, if you disconnect the utility power, it shuts them down. The best way to see if they're AC or DC voltage is look for that inverter, or if there's another panel there that would indicate that you're looking at something else.
But on the large solar fields, I think that's where you were going. Without the large,
yeah.
do you have a different tabletop
Right
for each, like the Summers
That's
Road
what I
one
was thinking
versus
of.
the Mill
Right.
Road one?
That's what I was
Do
thinking.
you game plan those ahead of time? Okay, you know where the disconnect is on each one. And
Yeah.
you've got
Well, being the electrical inspector in Wolverham, I kind of get the gist of how to, there's always a pole there with an air switch on it that you can disconnect those, but they all are pretty much the same. The only difference would be whether or not they're storing the power, or if they were just producing the power and feeding it back on the power line.
So that's the upgraded ones, the new battery storage ones, as Don talked about. I think
Yes, I don't know of any that are going on in town yet.
I think the length that they mentioned, they're going to be going to a battery. It's a requirement.
Yeah, new smart rules.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and that may affect the other two as well.
I think the Borrego one is going to have.
It's also.
Yeah.
Do you know that they're also doing, they're starting storage units for residential dwellings as well?
Yeah.
Small units that will provide 30 amps of power for 1 hour.
Really?
And I just found out that they are starting shingle solar as well. So that's a totally different type of solar you're going to be looking at pretty quick.
Wow, that's going to make it. So for roof entry, that would really make an issue for, yeah.
Dangerous.
So that would be a good, an opportunity for, as Don said, for sharing department information so that, okay, the building department gave a permit for shingle solar. You guys now have a map so you know where theirs are, just like the police department provides mapping for no-knock, things like that.
Yeah, it would be great to hook up with the building department and start getting their solar permits adjusted to our, our maps.
Budgeting, Ed, what's your background in that?
Budgeting this year, I feel like we're doing well at the fire department. We're not in the red this year. We haven't had, that's always a positive, right? We had to rework some numbers this year to get some of the NFPA requirements done, some of the hose testing, and some of the pump certification for every year that needs to be done. I didn't want to come back to town and ask for more money, but realizing that we weren't going to need our radio service agreement money for the existing radio system, because we'll have a warranty for 3 years with the new radio system. I was able to reallocate that money around to make that work so the town wasn't looking at an increase.
What do you see as the future for the department?
For the future, I like
Small
the way
town, you know.
it is a very small town. The people up there are great. We have some great people serving the fire department, serving the town. But I think as far as where it's going now is a positive way, I feel. And I like to see it continue.
How do you see developing a pool of call firefighters, you know, for the future? As people drop off or move or retire or.
Well, we're all call firefighters now, except for the 3 during the day, Monday through Friday. We have had 3 new firefighters come to us through the past year. We have 2 probationary firefighters, and we have 1 that was just hired on as a replacement for the full-time firefighter. I feel as our EMS program, having an ambulance will attract more people, and just that EMS side, I think we'll be able to capitalize on the firefighting side, whereas firefighting side will, you know, vice versa for people to be attracted to the department. I think we need to do a little bit better job of maybe seeking out these people and making people aware that they can help out. We can train them, and they're welcome to apply. I'm not sure everyone, you know, knows that as much as they do.
What's the biggest need up there now, you think? And John asked this question before. Is it personnel? I think you said, John, is it personnel? Is it equipment? Is it building?
I think right now it's probably building. The OSHA laws that came into effect back in February 2019, I think it was. The exhaust is a big thing for us. The safety of some of the older equipment, that kind of thing. So the personal health of the firefighters and members that are up there now is probably my main concern.
As Bob talked about before with the exhaust, you know, he noticed, you noticed, it's been a common theme coming, all of you are aware of it. I think the grant you got to treat the equipment or the clothing has helped. But again, getting an exhaust system in seems to be a priority for everybody that stepped forward.
So we did get the gear extractor. We installed that recently. That's great for our PPE. It cleans our turnout gear. But the exhaust thing, we did recently fill out a grant for one FEMA grant for the exhaust system. We won't know about that for a while. I always feel like before we come to the town and say we need this, we should do our due diligence to try to see if we can acquire it ourselves first.
Is there a chance that the exhaust system could help fight COVID?
Because there is a fund that for
I'm just saying,
only bleach will work.
$400,000.
So you're at the University of Mass?
Yes.
Okay. In Wilbraham?
Yeah.
And you've been doing this?
Yeah.
And you got a family?
Yeah.
So how's the balance going?
Well, it works out well for the town of Hamden, I think, only because I'm off the same days that the full-time people are off, or I'm back in town as they're getting off, I should say. So, I mean, for holidays, I have the same holidays off, I have weekends off, major snowstorms I have off. Unfortunately, COVID, I had a lot of time off, which worked out well for the town. So in that aspect, I think it fits, like I'm around when they're not here, which I think is important. I live a mile away from the fire station, so I'm always on the first engine out, or I'm able to make, you know, quick decisions on an incident right away. So or call for the proper resources as soon as possible.
What do you think the most important skills are for a fire chief to be effective that he has? Or she has?
I think communication is key. I tried to, when I took over, be really transparent, make sure everybody knew what was going on, make sure they knew what they could do to help out, because a lot of people were stepped right up and wanted to know what they could do. So we have it's communication, participation of everyone to pull as a team. I mean, we're all there for the same purpose and the same goal. And if everybody's willing to do it, it's huge. It's a great feeling for everyone.
Ben, you have a question?
No.
What do you think your strengths?
I guess my strengths would probably be to ask for help and get people to participate in ongoing projects, to realize that I can't handle it on my own, and it takes a group of people that are experienced in what they're experienced at, and that's probably my strength, is to select those people, those individuals, and realize what their strengths are, and assign them to the proper tasks to help out.
And what are those areas that you think you'd like to work on to improve?
As far as
a police chief, just anything. I mean, I don't know.
In your role as fire chief,
in your role as fire chief, not in your personal life.
Not your golf
fire
game,
chief.
Things to improve on would be to acquire just the, like I said, the safety, the protection equipment for these firefighters, to meet these OSHA regulations, and continue safety and success of the fire department, and continuing to help the town of Hamden out, the residents. I think that's why I joined at such a young age. My father was on the fire department my whole life, and watching him run out to fires all the time just made me realize, hey, somebody needs them more than I do right now, So it made me want to, help people, I think.
So you've got two other people who in the department who were interviewed, and you think if you get the appointment, everyone will be okay with that?
Well, I'd like to think so. Yes.
No, I asked that because we've got. I believe we have really three talented people who are a real benefit to the town and the department, and I don't want to lose anybody.
Absolutely. The deputy Farrell right now, he's been by my side through all this. He's really good. He's excellent. Can't say enough positive things about him. Mike Hatch, he recently rejoined the fire department. Very talented individual, and I hope he sticks around, because we could definitely capitalize with his experience and knowledge as well. They're two valuable people on the department. I think we all are, though, but that's what makes a successful department. And I think they're here because they want to be here. They want to help. So I don't think that's going to discourage anyone in any means, in my opinion.
Any questions for us? No, we're not changing your budget.
Okay. No, that's it.
Well, thank you, Ed.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Handshake. Okay.
This last person's name on the agenda says Ronald Dowd.
It's Dowdy, right?
Dowdy.
Dowdy.
Hi, Mr. Dowdy.
Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
Good. Have a
Have a
seat.
seat right there.
I would normally shake everybody's hand.
Yeah, well, we're doing this. We're all doing this.
I apologize.
Hi, I'm Don Davenport, Chairman of the Board. This is John Flynn, longtime member of the board. Mary Ellen Glover, member of the board. Thank you for taking the time to come in, and the interest in Hamden, the fire department.
Thanks for having me.
Tell us a little about yourself.
So My name's Ronald Downey, Brownie. I go by. Started the fire service in 1998 as a volunteer firefighter in Montgomery County, Maryland, which is a county just outside of Washington, D.C. Population about 1.5, 1.6 million people. I started in the Kensington Fire Department as a what they call a firefighter rescuer. We averaged about between all four stations 27,000 calls a year. The station that I was assigned to at the time averaged about 10,000 calls. Worked my way through the ranks. Eventually made deputy fire chief, where I was in charge of 2 stations, 54 people, including career and volunteer personnel. I have all my certifications up through Fire Officer 2, Instructor 2. I'm certified by multiple states to be a fire chief. I'm also a nationally registered paramedic. I currently work for a political organization established by Congress called the Metropolitan Washington Airports Authority, which is based out of Virginia. I live in Enfield, Connecticut. I commute back and forth to work. They established a corporation to lease 2 airports in Virginia. I'm currently assigned to Dallas Airport as a captain station commander, where I'm in charge of 9 other people. I moved to Enfield about 2 years ago now, almost 2 years on the dot. My wife is a ER physician at Bay State Medical Center. So working as a career firefighter in Virginia, we work 24-hour shifts. So I go down there, work 48 hours straight, come back up here. Normally, prior to COVID, I would fly back and forth. Lately, I've been driving, which hasn't been too bad because
no one's on the road.
However, my 52-minute flight time went to a 5-hour drive. So.
And that gets old quick, I'm sure.
It does. It does. But I love where I'm working. I love my crew. I have no complaints about what I do.
I can appreciate that. I used to work for the Department of Justice in the Medicaid Fraud Control Unit, and I used to fly back and forth from Bradley to Washington 3 days a week.
It's fun. I mean, I enjoy flying out of Bradley because I've got it timed perfectly to where I take the last flight out. I can walk through security, pretty much walk right on my plane from door to door, hour and a half. COVID changed that. So I have all my fire certs, Fire 1, Fire 2, and like I said, I'm a nationally registered paramedic. I'm also a pro-boarded hazmat tech. I actually submitted a letter of interest to this position almost 12 months ago. I read an article that the current chief was stepping down. So I've been in communication with somebody back and forth about the next steps in this process. So I've been keeping my eye on the town for a little bit.
So how are you gonna? What's your adjustment from 10,000 calls to part-time 500 calls?
I've been in the fire service for 21 years. Call load varies day to day, week to week. There's not much of an adjustment to take place. Of course, 15 calls on 24-hour shift definitely makes your day go by. Sometimes faster than you'd like it to, but it is not much of an adjustment period. Switching into a new town, that would be the adjustment. Learning the personalities, learning all the names, learning the response area, learning how Hamden does it compared to what I know. And I mean, when it comes down to it, I work for Congress, so everything comes down to the bottom dollar. So, as a paid fire chief, as one of the first paid fire chiefs in town, residents are going to be looking to how are we spending my money, and that's the concern is how am I going to show that your assessment is worth what you're getting out of it.
Mariella?
What are the most important skills that you think a fire chief should have to be successful?
Some of the most important skills, I want to say the first one is honesty. Not only do you have to be honest with myself, but you have to be honest with the people that work and volunteer under your command. Taking the department out of it, you have to be honest with the people that you serve. And I think that's, in today's climate of public safety and public service, I think some of the departments have forgotten the honesty key of things. Thankfully, everybody's happy to see the fire department when they arrive. Unfortunately, on the flip coin of that, nobody's really happy to see the police arrive. So honestly, I think would probably be the biggest one. Bravery. Everybody that the first person through the wall always gets bloodied is a phrase that I say a lot to my newer people. This is a new concept for this town, a paid fire chief, and something to continue. So you're stepping into uncertainty, and you're going to need a leader that's going to be able to show that we're brave enough to take on the task. I think would be the two biggest ones I would say.
Thank you.
John, you have a question?
I don't know if you had a chance to review our current situation. We have needs both in personnel, as Don talked about, we're going from a all volunteer department to 3 paid people. We have needs in infrastructure, we have needs in equipment. If you had a chance to review these, where do you see the first thing you would step to do? And I don't know if you had a chance to like go through the building at all, or
I have not yet, but I've been kind of keeping tabs with meetings and minutes that have been posted. At the end of the day, it comes down to staffing. It comes down to personnel, whether it be paid, on call, or volunteer. It doesn't matter how many fire trucks that we have sitting in the base. If I don't have people to get them out the doors, I can have the prettiest, nicest, multi-million-dollar fire trucks. So we, in 2020, are in a whole new challenge of how do we get people, how do we get younger members, volunteers to come in and staff fire trucks. One of my previous departments, we did an incentive program to where we would gather younger members that are looking to go to college, and they're through federal safer grants. We can assist them with tuition. So by being an active volunteer, we can pay part of your tuition for that semester. And I think by the time that we stopped, we were up to $3,500 a semester. And that was at no cost to the department. The federal government picked up that tab. So staffing is huge. And we have to look at town demographics. How do we attract people to come here? And I don't want to sit here and say that we have to rely on volunteer staffing. At the same time, we have to look at our needs of the responses, make sure we're meeting proper NFPA response times. And if it comes down to it, months, years down the road, increase in paid staffing, maybe even an increase in the time that paid staffing. I know right now that's daytime only, which is a great place to start. And it should be a constant re-evaluation in the fire chief's mind of 1 year, 3 year, 5 year plan.
One thing Don talked about before is we were experiencing a kind of a growth in solar fields, commercial installations. What's your experience in dealing with fires in those where we have carcinogens, possibly? We're seeing battery storage become part of the mix at this point, both in the fields and at home. Somebody mentioned that's happening.
Yeah, so commercial solar fields in large fields that I drove past one coming into that. I do not have a lot of experience with. However, solar panels on top of residential and commercial buildings are becoming more and more common now that states are offering rebates and everything. So in Maryland and Virginia, where I've primarily done my structural firefighting, our local power company actually goes through a training class. So I'm well versed in their panels for that particular area. I don't want to say that they're the same across the board, but it couldn't be much different. Coming from the hazardous material side of things, batteries. We start getting batteries cook off. Thankfully, it's not a huge fire hazard. It's more just a hazardous material. So we need to be worried about oxygen deficiency atmospheres and how we're going to ventilate that area. Best thing about a battery, if you control the power, you just control the fire itself.
Have you been in a situation, you talk about team, have you been in a situation where someone on the team wasn't pulling their weight, and how would you handle that?
So as command officers and line officers coming up through, I've seen two different sides of the fence. One being we immediately put paper on you and we start the disciplinary process. I'm not a huge fan of that time because when my team members aren't doing their job, that's my fault. It's not their fault. And I didn't lay out my expectations clearly enough so that they knew what I wanted them to do. So I'm a huge proponent of sitting down and talking to you one-on-one. Coming from our area, there's a whole collective bargaining issue that we have to get into, but then union rep and everything. So the first thing I would do is speak to them one-on-one and let them know, these are my expectations that you're not meeting. What can I do to help? Sometimes it's not a professional thing. Sometimes there's a problem at home, and getting them behind closed doors and asking what's going on, you find out a lot more. So it's a touchy subject because there may be more than them that's just not enjoying coming to work.
Really.
What size fire department do you think we need for a town of 5,000? We presently have 3 full-time firemen. Do you see that as having to grow? Do you see that? How do you envision that?
So town of 5,000 is a great number, but you have to look at your emergency response per capita, and how many calls are we having throughout the year. And if you look at the Hamden Fire Department's call load over the past 7 years, from what I can pull up online, which stopped at 2018, your call load's progressively going up. Be from a couple of different things. Your population and the town has continually grown. Your real estate prices are starting to attract more and more people here. So let's say 5,000 residents. Let's say you average 1,000 calls a year in the next 5 years. You have to look at response times and call loads. 3 firefighters during the day, during the week is great. If we're running majority of our calls Saturday night, are we ensuring staffing? So just with those 2 numbers, with 5,000 people and 1,000 calls a year, probably 3 to 7 full-time firefighters would benefit you. Of course, now you have to get into qualifications. If I have 3 firefighters, what are they qualified to do? What can they operate? Where can they ride? And then that brings into a whole another training piece. Just because I have 3 firefighters, nobody can start the fire truck. Might as well not hold it.
What kind of personality do you work best with?
I think everybody in the fire service is pretty type A. Thankfully, I'm married to a really level-headed person who's kept me grounded my entire 14 years without an internet. So I strive in type A personality, the outgoing, the loud, the boisterous, because that's what inside the firehouse generally is. It's fun trying to control that, because you have to figure out, what can I do to interest this person to make them listen to me instead of talking over me. Running 911 calls, you become an expert at all types of personalities. I'm never running a call and people are happy to, people aren't calling me because they're having a great day. So type A inside the firehouse is something that I love to work with. And however, any good firefighter can adapt to any personality that they encounter on any 911 call.
What's the toughest command decision you had to make?
Whether to pull people out of a fire or not. For a couple of reasons. One, obviously for my guy's safety. And 2, I'm literally telling the homeowner, your property is not worth it anymore. So buildings can be replaced, pictures can't, memories can't. That was the hardest, and I can tell you the day that I did it for the very first time, when we had to pull everyone out and what we call just reset, regroup. Things just weren't working out, and I had the homeowner literally sitting in front of the vehicle that I was in, commanding the fire, and you could tell that she knew when everybody started coming out that her house was gone. Because in our area, lightweight construction, we don't get in the first couple minutes, that's going to be it.
What is your proudest achievement, would you say?
Becoming a paramedic. Little backstory about my wife and I. She was a paramedic in my first firehouse. I was never a huge fan of EMS in my younger years because I just wanted to fight fire and that's it. That was all my biggest concern. Unfortunately, the fire service isn't that anymore. It's primarily, about 85-15, depending on where you're at. So when she convinced me to become a paramedic, all my friends that knew me from when I started at the ripe age of 15, they're like, "Ronnie, a paramedic?" And I kind of laughed at it too. However, I enjoyed it. It was, I went through an accelerated program. I did 1,800 hours of advanced ALS training in 6 months. I wrote off my life for 6 months. This is what I want to, and I've had a couple really good saves since then. So I wish I could go back and tell 15-year-old me, might want to become a paramedic at the age of 19 instead of, 30.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
You understand? What do you know about small town budgeting process?
Small town, large town, Congress, it all comes down to the dollar. You have to justify to the members that put you in these seats why we're spending their tax dollars. If we see ourselves on the news reflected negatively, we have to answer for that. All the young drivers that I have trained to drive fire trucks, the first day I tell them, you're driving a billboard. We are representing somebody. And right now, whether, unfortunately, my current fire trucks are really beautiful lime green, I'm representing the name that's on that door. So if we do dumb things, people aren't going to know about it. Put that in a small town, magnify that by 1,000 times. Because no matter what, somebody's going to know somebody that knows somebody else that knows somebody here.
Oh yeah, they know where the truck is all the time, every minute of the day.
So, you have to be prepared to justify that cost. We've had people question us going to the grocery store. My tax dollar is spending so you can go get lunch. So those are issues that you run into everywhere. Comes down to respect. Explain to them what's going on.
5 words that describe your character.
5 words?
Yeah.
That's a new one.
Okay. Not to repeat the question.
That's okay.
She asked. Honest.
Yeah.
Brave. Forward. Calm. And reserved.
All right. Yeah.
And I will say the 4th one, calm, is one of my best attributes as a command officer. A cool, calm, collected voice over the radio on scene of chaos. Makes or breaks the call.
Yep.
What can you do for Hampton that other candidates might not be able to do, would you say?
So, to be honest, I know I'm at a disadvantage because I'm an outsider. I'm new to the New England area. I just moved up here years ago. I see that as a good thing. I'm a fresh set of eyes. And sometimes a fresh set of eyes is needed. I don't know the personalities yet. So it's good to take a step back and get somebody from the outside saying, this is working well, this is not. And this is how I would change it to make it work well. Staffing could work perfectly, and I could say this is perfect. However, fire truck design, the ergonomics of this, looking at our crew, is this working for what we're doing? Call load, call response. Town of Hampton relies heavily on water supply. Are we providing adequate water for the first and firefighters to do their job? So a fresh set of eyes and outside perspective, I think would be the best. I say that as an outsider, so obviously I'm biased to.
Sure. Yeah.
I'm not sure about driving a truck through 5 feet of snow. I mean, he's a southern boy.
We are southern boys, and I will tell you that thankfully this winter is perfect for me because it snowed like twice and once before Thanksgiving.
Just kind of easing you into it.
It's faking you out.
Yeah, it was like we got our first snowstorm this year before Thanksgiving. I was like, "Oh, are you kidding me?" And then that was pretty much it.
Do you have any questions for us?
No, I know this is a part-time position. I've been eagerly waiting for this. I'll be completely upfront with you. I interviewed for a deputy fire chief's position in Southwick this time last year. Unfortunately, I was the runner-up, so in case you start checking names and stuff. I'm glad to be sitting across the table and having a chance to see what I can offer, even the southern board in me. If I know it's going to snow, I'll probably just stay at the firehouse.
Nice.
Appreciate you coming in.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. Nice
Thank
to
you.
meet you.
Thank you. Nice meeting you. We'll be in touch. Oh, handshake.
Yeah.
Handshake.
Unfortunately, I think COVID's going to be the
Yeah.
Take care, bud.
Thank you.
Take care, yeah. I gotta take this off. Doesn't it get you after a while? I don't
I
have
work with it
anything.
all day.
Oh my
question,
God.
same question, same question. Same question, same question. Not easy.
No, but you want to.
Okay,
All right.
now do we have discussion time or administrative report?
I think we need consideration, private consideration time. Got some discussion to say? I'll be happy to hear it.
What did you say?
No, I'm
Well,
saying,
we're talking about the
what's
next
our
process. Should we,
Oh.
Yeah.
should we just think about it and do something next week? Should we have a little discussion? Other than being very impressed with all the candidates, I think we're very, very fortunate. Very
I'd have to
fortunate.
say that, you know, the town, we had 4 good candidates, I think, for that part.
Yep.
You know,
I would think thinking about it is fine. I think we should check references. So Mr. Marco could do that. That would give us one more piece of information to see how their present supervisors feel they've done their job and whatever.
Yeah.
And then come next week prepared to. Oh, because next week is
Next week is town
so
meeting.
it has to go the week after.
we have time. I mean,
We have time.
Because we have an hour, I want to
We
say
have an
this,
hour.
to kill before town meeting.
It's not
Might
like
as
we have a
well
lot.
kill it
It's
good.
not like we have a lot of town meetings to
Well,
worry about.
Are we passed a
So we're
couple
going to
things over.
schedule a
We
meeting
talked
at 6 o'clock
6 o'clock,
6
we always
o'clock.
do,
at Thornton Burgess.
at Thornton
Thornton
Burgess.
Burgess.
Yeah.
Are we gonna have Mark there? We talked about pushing Mark to next week,
Yeah.
go over
we
the
have Mark
construction.
there.
I think it's a good
You've got a
thing.
couple of issues.
He has to start thinking about applying for,
Yeah.
you know, his bidding stuff, so we
Bidding
need to
stuff.
get him on the agenda.
And
Any
we
other
can-
question about that? I think putting this in there and
We can
have a
put this in there now.
15-minute discussion and
Yep. Okay.
moving along.
Okay.
And you'll check the references in the meantime.
Sure.
Yeah, because we should check the references.
Okay.
I mean, that's important.
So we want to do town administrator report?
Okay.
It was a great report. Bob.
We've been
Thank
over
you.
some of
Nice
these
report.
items tonight already. Have you seen the new office that's being prepared?
Yes, I did.
Yes.
That was originally going to be a conference room. Now, certainly with COVID, it'll be converted at least temporarily to an office. I had a talk with the treasurer today. He is also interested in having space for his new assistant. And I'm thinking over there in that area where the main copier is, that there's a space there that is used from time to time by one of the employees in the clerk's office. I think we can make that, you know, an area that can be used by the assistant treasurer. The municipal vulnerability program, the application went in. We did get endorsements that were required as well. I also applied for $51,000 under the CARES Act and FEMA for reimbursement. That's the first tranche. We're gonna go back for more as more expenses are developed. And certainly we're only talking about expenses to June 30th at this point. After June 30th, we have a whole new process and round for expenses that we incur up until December the 31st. So I don't think we're going to get to the level that the state is willing to reimburse, the $460,000, but certainly we can take care of a number of expenses that are going to be required of the town as a result of the changes under COVID-19. So the cupola is down, the roof is repaired, and Mr. McNaughton will be beginning to finish the work over here. I notice he has his equipment in there, so he may be ready to start the next day or so.
When's the cupola going back up?
There's no plan to put it back up at this point. The cupola is in very poor condition. I think it's a matter of rebuilding the cupola, building a new one. What's been represented to me by the building inspector is that this one was not well built to begin with, not worth repairing, and that we should consider rebuilding or building a brand new cupola and put it up there.
Okay.
All right.
One thing that probably would qualify for CPA money, so if it's
Yeah.
something the board wants to look into for next year or something.
Yeah, I mean,
The cupola's got to go back up.
sure, I agree. I mean, it's
I'm for that. I want that.
it's part of the building. The McNamara Holding contract, I'm hoping will be ready for you to sign next week. Action Ambulance is available now. We are moving ahead with the community development block grant proposal. It is being submitted. We're part of a group of communities. It's always a stronger application if you're part of a group. And they will provide funding for social services. In this case, it would be funding for the senior center and also for support for small businesses that need some support to recover from having been closed forcibly for all these weeks. I am to ask you tonight to approve the conservation restriction for the Westbrook project. That project, which has been underway for quite a long time, is ready to wrap up and be completed. A check is being drawn. This would be community preservation funds for $72,000 going down to Doherty Wallace, and the closing will happen soon. And there's a request for the town to accept. This is not new, the conservation restriction. So you would vote that. That'll help the process towards conclusion.
You have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the conservation restrictions for the Westbrook, I think it was phase 2.
Westbrook phase 2.
Yeah.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Also, we do have the 2 bids for the A&R.
Quotes.
2 quotes, I'm sorry. Obviously, the low bid, Smith Associates, $3,500. Other bid was $7,500. So, if you
they're under the 30B limits down have really gone up quite a bit. I don't know if you noticed
they're
that.
very high now.
Yeah,
I mean,
so you
compared
just
to
need,
what
you
they
make
used
it
to
at 3 attempts under 10. It's 3 formal quotes is 25, something like that. So anyhow, so we got there are only really 2 survey people in this area, Frederick, and so I'd like to start to kick the process along, give the work to Smith for $3,500.
Okay. Any second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
There's a document sign. Yeah, under $10,000, the recommendation is use good business practices.
Yeah.
Then you do the 3 quotes up until
25, isn't it now?
Yeah.
Used to be. I get 3 quotes at 10 years back. Yeah.
We've talked about procedure for restaurant reopening. Next week, we're going to meet with the superintendent to talk about the asphalt roller, the work plan for this season. We also have Larry Tuttle's his drawings just came in today. We'll give you a set of those plans. Take a look at, and when you agree to those, we'll go out to bid for the project. We talked about waivers. I think that's the report. Other than to again mention that this week the regional meeting is going to be happening. It'll be a Zoom meeting, 7 o'clock on Wednesday.
Oh,
okay.
Don, do you want to give us a quick little recap of
I get
last week?
quick report. We had a Zoom meeting with the chairman of the Board of Selectmen in Wilbraham Advisory Committee. 2 of our advisory committee members were on it, and the regional school representative. And basically, it was just going over what their budget is going to be. They do have a savings of about $1.2 million, and they're going to apply that. They're going to pay forward their collaborative expenses for next year because they're concerned that they'll get at least a 10% cut in Chapter 70 money, so that'll cover that. The transportation money was initially about $200,000. That was lowered to $148,000. The original estimate was by student, but they actually went by. There's 3 tiers. There's a transportation, regular transportation, special ed transportation, and vocational transportation. So all that for our region came up to $148,000. That's going to be applied as a credit towards their bill for this year. And then there was some $250,000 in CARES money. They're not going to use any this year. They're going to use that next year for the help in the reopening of the schools and whatever needs to do there.
I saw that some cities or some regional districts are forecasting up to 20%.
Some are, yeah, but the hard part for everybody right now is there's been no word at all out of the state. They haven't even talked about a budget, so we don't know what we're going to do. But
Nor about opening schools.
more about opening
So
schools. They have a lot of
may be in no rush to do
There was a
anything
little
for
bit of
2 weeks.
discussion about that of opening the schools. We also, part of our discussion was about the town meeting. You know, Wilbraham's going ahead with their town meeting the same night we are, and they're going ahead with their election, I think, on the 20th. And they pretty much on the same position. They're going to use the high school auditorium, partially the cafeteria, spacing, hand sanitizers.
Oh gosh, they should be fine. I'm sure they got a pared down budget. I'm sure
Yeah,
they'll be
yeah, they
fine
got
with
the same thing.
auditorium.
Although they did say they're going to go through their whole thing, right? Their whole warrant, the
They
whole,
have,
yeah.
they have some archaic, I don't want to say archaic or whatever. You should look at their warrant. They
Yeah.
have some interesting
Yeah.
articles on there.
They're going to go through everything, but that was the basics of the discussion. So
Okay, can we also add Ed, or we talked about meeting with Ed Senadella? Can we take care of that next
Oh,
week?
yeah.
Because it's kind of
Sometime
important. We
next week.
have the end of the year. We need to make sure
Yeah.
that we're on base.
Oh, yeah,
you know,
okay.
and also to
Different-
thank him for actually the use of his machines.
Yeah.
For the town building has been very helpful.
And I've talked with him about continuing to do that.
Yeah. And I think Jeff told
They
me it's
didn't
still a
charge
couple.
us for the first time.
I think Jeff told me it's still a couple of weeks before our new machines come in.
Right.
As well. So.
Anything
And
else?
we also, coincidentally, Becky sent me a message suggesting that we use one of the persons who is working in town hall in the tax checkoff program to do more regular maintenance of doorknobs and railings and so forth. Maybe on a nightly basis, just
Yeah.
go over that once we reoccupy the building.
Okay. Anything else?
I'm a little concerned about Lori McCool and the salary that she's getting, considering she's putting twice the amount of hours in that she was putting in before the COVID, the whole thing. And I know that some of that will come through the care money,
Yes.
but that's a delay.
Yes.
And I know that the people doing the job that she does, if they do it privately, get like
Yeah.
$50 an hour.
I know.
And she's getting like
I know.
$2 an hour.
I have stressed
so I don't
to
know
her,
whether we should
track
do something.
your extra hours and we will apply for the reimbursement.
Right, because we have enough money
Yeah.
in Board of Health revolving. We could
give
go
her-
ahead and front
we could
it.
give her, we could
We
give
could
her a
front it and
bonus
get it reimbursed.
that's my
Right,
point,
yeah.
is we could
Yeah.
give her some bonus money out of
No,
we should.
not even a bonus.
Not
You
even
said we can
bonus
go ahead
money.
and front the
Yeah.
money and
Right.
get reimbursed on our own.
Right,
So she's not waiting. You're
So
100% right.
But that's, I mean,
Yeah.
it's just not right to
Yeah.
have her working all those hours,
Yeah.
and she always comes in 2 minutes if you
Yeah.
call her, if she can get there, so.
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe we can do that for her.
Right. Anything else to
Out of
come
the Board of
before the
Health money.
board?
Huh?
Anything else to come before the board?
Not from me.
Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you all.